Welcome to the 8th edition of the European AI Forum. We had a little restream problematic at the moment, and I'm just seeing that everything seems to be working fine. At least I hope so. So I'm Daniel Abbou, President European AI Forum, and also General Manager of the German AI Association. And we are very happy that you joined us here for the 8th edition of the European AI Forum. Let me start one thing. This European AI Forum will be very, at least in the beginning, AI Act heavy. Yeah, we will talk about, of course, the AI Act, which the political agreement was done this week. But I want to emphasize in the beginning something different and something which I think is very important. This year was a very good year for AI and for AI entrepreneurs, and not not in other parts of the world, also in Europe, let me say. For example, we have the French startup Mistral, yeah, which had just, I think yesterday came another closing round of 400 million euros, bringing them to a 2 billion euro valuation. Congratulations, by the way, a French company, a French startup getting these kind of evaluations. Then this guy you're seeing there, yeah, is Jonas Androulis. Yeah, he is the CEO of Aleph Alpha. And they closed the Series B round with 500 million euros. Aleph Alpha is a member of the German AI Association and a valued member. And we will hear a little bit afterwards from Aleph Alpha, a little bit about their financing round and what they think about the act. But what I want to say in the beginning is AI in Europe is not only regulation. AI are entrepreneurs. These, I hope many of you who are watching now are AI entrepreneurs. I know that many other stakeholders from policy and so are watching us. But this is AI. The AI development is not done by regulation. It is done by entrepreneurs, female, male, diverse, I don't care. This is the point. Yeah? The point is that the entrepreneurial energy of many people in Europe are what can constitute an AI ecosystem, and not regulation will do it. And these are entrepreneurs all over Europe. As you can see, the European AI Forum consists of 9 countries, and the entrepreneurs from Lithuania, Poland, Bulgaria, Slovenia, Croatia, the Netherlands, France, of course, Germany in this case, and last but not least, Austria. And Austria brings me to hopefully that she can join me, my dear colleague and Vice President of the European AI Forum, Jeannette Gorzala. Hello, Jeannette.
Hello, good morning, Daniel. Nice to be here and kick off the 8th edition of the European AI Forum. As you mentioned, there's a lot going on in the ecosystem, mentioning, of course, the largest funding rounds. I also tried to experiment a little with the model Aleph Alpha, and even Mistral released, I think, yesterday or a few days ago. So exciting times ahead. And some might say exciting times despite regulation, of course, because it's always a balance. And the one thing that I think is not often mentioned, because it's in the very, very back of the AI Act, that there are innovation promoting measures in there for the industry. So let's see how we embark on this AI governance road, but also to look at the other pieces of the pie, which are, of course, promoting innovation, promoting talent, and promoting more investment, in particular, into European AI companies.
Yeah, I can't agree more on this one. This was a crazy year. Let's not kid about it. It was a crazy year, many panels and stuff like that. But we all had the possibility going around Europe, visiting AI startups, talking to the stakeholders there. And what we're really seeing is the energy which is going down there. So we're very happy, as we said, that you joined Jeannette and myself for the 8th edition of the European AI Forum. Not the 8th edition of the European AI Act. No, this is the point. So, guys, the first block is yesterday evening. I had the chance of talking to some European Parliament members and also to Aleph Alpha about what they're thinking about the act. And I think we can watch this, Jeannette, and then perhaps we can talk a little bit about the AI Act then.
Yes, let's do that. Let's jump into your exciting interviews. I saw you had the time to speak to Eva Maydell, Sergey Lagodinsky, and the team of Aleph Alpha about the AI Act, about the exciting nail-biting trilogue negotiations and many other aspects. So thank you for doing that, Daniel. Thank you for our esteemed panelists for taking the time to talk to us and share their views. And let's see what they have to say.
And discussing the AI Act, I have the distinguished honor of talking with a good friend of the European AI Forum, the member of the European Parliament, Eva Maydell. Eva, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm very happy I'm able to join. Actually, I think I have managed to be there every year since you're organizing this forum.
Yes.
And I hope one day we could do it in person.
I would agree to that. We really would love to see you in real life and not only via Zoom calls there. If I may ask, because not many people have had negotiations which took 2 days and 20 hours. How can you? How are negotiations which are taking so long? And is it caffeine or coffee in this point, and what can you still discuss after 15-16 hours? Doesn't it get quite blurry after some time?
Great question. Thank you. Well, once we wrapped up the negotiations, someone said that we need to apply for the world record of Guinness, because apparently these were, at least within the European institutions, the longest negotiations. I don't know if that's the case, but they were definitely lengthy. It's been quite the last few days, I have to be honest. But this was just the final push. Kind of the topping on the pudding, because the whole endeavor has taken 2 years. So we had to have a timeline during which to put all the necessary provisions in place while consulting our democratic bodies, the Council, the member states, the Parliament, the different political groups, and also provide the political direction initially from the Commission, and then Commission assisting us through these talks. You know, it hasn't been easy. It was a marathon of 38 hours, but it allowed us to spend the necessary time to get to a political agreement on the first ever law to put certain provisions on AI. It's in a way the first comprehensive law to govern AI. And yes, it's a significant milestone, not just because we had to, some people suggested we apply for the Guinness record, but also because it's a historic, in a way, legislation. And what I think we did, and to answer briefly your question, I think to a certain extent is adrenaline that drives you forward for so many minutes. We did have one break, of course, but it only came after the first 22 hours. So you can imagine how difficult the first day was. But also maybe the break was necessary to kind of reassess what we've achieved and what we want to continue pushing for. And I think it helped actually in sobering up a little bit our heads, but also understanding how far we can go in our different positions. And I think all this work in the past 2 years has enabled us to lay a common European vision for the future of technology. One where AI is developed in a safer way. It's abiding our democratic values, but also in the same time, it propels and helps innovation to happen in Europe. What we've managed is we succeeded in putting guardrails to ensure that those systems have those things in place. But on the other hand, I believe we've also managed to have some sort of balance when it comes to competitiveness. After all, for me personally, it's key that European companies like yours can maintain their competitiveness, but in the same time, it gives you the legal certainty and resources that you might need to develop AI in Europe.
May I ask, how difficult, when you see him now in the back, the last 2 years, what you say about the AI, how difficult was it to put technology into a legal framework?
Well, I cannot lie. It's of course challenging. Why? First, because you're regulating something that is currently being developed, is developing faster than we can comprehend it. And this is why many times I have called throughout these negotiations that, first of all, this is not business as usual. It is not the same. It should not be the same type of process of legislating that we know. We obviously needed to consult much broadly, but also think about not solving a problem, but think about how do we prevent something that might occur, might happen, put the guardrails, put the obligations out there to help the companies develop AI in a safer manner and make sure that citizens are better protected. Why do I say that? It might sound logical to you. Well, I say this because most regulations that we've been doing or working, they're fixing an already existing problem. And sometimes this is much more easier to do because you know what the problem is. You can have different way of how to solve it, but you know what the problem is. And also citizens know what you're solving. Now we're putting certain framework that is to govern something that is in its development. So from this perspective, it is very challenging. And I think it's important how we interact with those developing it, how do we explain it to citizens, and how we here regulate. And I think when we talk about emerging technologies, it's so much more about seeing the bigger picture and asking yourself what it is truly that I want to achieve, and then putting it down in the legislation. And I kind of feel like we do this in a reverse order, or not in the order that I necessarily explained.
In the point of now we have the regulation, but we have to see that the European AI ecosystem is already lacking behind the American, the Chinese one. After the regulation, is there also innovation? Is Europe prepared also, I say with perhaps the Parliament or the Commission, in fostering European innovation? Because I think that the regulatory part is nearly done now, but what can the European Parliament do or the Commission do of investing and fostering a European AI ecosystem?
Well, I was in a bit of a comfortable position throughout the negotiations because I have worked on the file and on this new law from the perspective of the industry committee in the European Parliament. So the way I see artificial intelligence is that this is going to be the technology that is going to propel our economic growth and productivity. And we have to be on top of it. There is no question on that. But if AI is to be the engine of our competitiveness, then we need to support it. We need to support the ecosystem. We need to make sure that we put the baseline that can help your companies grow and innovate. So what we particularly did in the AI Act is, first of all, to have a very ambitious approach on regulatory sandboxes, much more ambitious approach than the initial Commission proposal. Then we made sure there's a research and open source exemption. Also, Another thing which we work hard is to have a more light touch and flexible approach to general purpose AI system, including those that will fall in the so-called two-tier approach that accounts for the differences in capabilities and the differences of resources between companies. Another thing we did, which was important, is to make sure that there's alignment with existing sectorial legislation in order to reduce that regulatory burden that your companies very often face. And finally, we further improved and introduced measures to support startups and SMEs. But of course, saying and listing all these achievements in a way, it's good. But, I don't have just my rosé glasses. I can see, just like you yourself said, we can see what's the situation on the ground, or more like in the world and where we are. And this is why we have pushed for a more innovative, friendly approach. We believe we got a very good balance, but the most important thing of this legislation is collaborating and working with our international partners, making sure that AI excellence in Europe continues, while we align our vision also with other international partners on the regulatory side, but we learn from them on the side of where we support those companies, be it with financial measures, be it with further investment. And this is why for the next term of the European institutions, I would like to see us thinking more on the competitiveness part. How do we support more investments in research? How do we accomplish the Capital Markets Union? How do we create something called the Sovereign Tech Fund, for example? It has to be strategic legislation similar to the CHIPS Act. I was also one of the people negotiating and drafting this law. And there you could see more like, where do we want to get and how can we support that vision? So I would like a little bit more visionary approach in terms of supporting our competitiveness through emerging tech.
Eva Maydell, thank you so much for taking the time for us in the European AI Forum. We wish you all the best. Merry Christmas, and wish you a Happy New Year.
Thank you. A very blessed and beautiful Christmas to everyone, and thanks for having me.
Thank you. And continuing our discussion about the AI Act here at the European AI Forum, I'm very honored that he took the time after many days of long negotiations. Sergey Lagodinsky from the Green Party, Member of Parliament of the European Parliament, of course. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much. And yes, I'm still alive.
I have to ask, because most of the people don't have they have Zoom calls which take too long, but 2 to 3 days negotiating 20 hours. Is this surreal as an experience? Can you tell us a little bit about how this went, and what can you negotiate after 16, 17, 18 hours?
It actually goes much better than you think, because of course this is a very alternating experience. So it's not that we're sitting there and falling asleep and fighting with the sleep all the time. No, these negotiations were very different at different phases of negotiations. So, for example, we listened, of course, for the position of the Council, our position, the Commission, and then we withdrew and had our own deliberations. We have made our own proposals. We fought with each other within the parliament, because of course also different fractions, different groups in the parliament, political groups, have different priorities, and also different priorities on what should be kept within the negotiation process and what can we drop. And then with this position, we go back and we surprise the Council with our positions, and then the Council withdraws. So it's a process that is not boring, and it's also a process that is supported by a lot of experts. I know in the media there was a kind of an astonishment on how can members of parliament be still awake and produce good laws. Well, many of those laws are based on concepts that were already ready before. that we explored before. And we had very good teams. Each political group had a team. Each member of parliament had a team. These are all experts who are trained also to negotiate in lengthy marathons. So the first day, of course, at some point you want to fall asleep, but then you're awake and you are driven by your motivation. 23 hours during the first day, then you go and have a sleep, and then you think everything will be done much faster, and still we had 17 hours again on the next day. But we all survived, and life went on. So I'm back here.
Well, I'm very happy that you're alive. And what would you say what do you think about the result of these negotiations and the political agreement on the AI Act?
You know, you wouldn't be surprised probably that I think that this was a good deal. And again, we are now in a phase that's interesting maybe to your members as well to know, where many of the agreements that we had that were made, that were not put into final written form, they are now put in form by the technical teams. And even now there are issues that have to be negotiated until the end. I personally think, you know, our constituencies and many people have expected much tougher things. You know, we were getting pressure from both sides. Of course, the community of digital rights wanted much tougher bans. They wanted a complete, our position, the parliament position was a complete ban on biometric identification in public spaces, which we knew we would not be able to get with member states, also because they have a different function. They have to execute, they have to prosecute, they have to prevent terrorism. So they have a different perspective on that. And just the same is from the other side, when we're talking about foundation models. Of course, the Haar, I think, from the perspective of enterprises and perspective of startups or big enterprises. And of course, I know that many people are disappointed. This is too much regulation. But on the other hand, we have an approach here that is much more differentiated than the approach that the parliament originally had. And I think this is the right way of differentiating between general purpose AI, which is powerful and is a systemic risk, as we called it, a risk to our society, which starts from 10 to 25, you know, the higher level of computational power. And on the other hand, other general purpose AI, which is not subjected to stricter rules on many issues. And I think this is the way of, you know, negotiating with innovation.
Yeah, it's compromise. What I think is very interesting, as you said, there's a political agreement, but it has to be brought to paper now. How can you how can I say, control that the political agreement is really represented in this paper? Is there a kind of feedback loop? How can you put our members through what is happening right now to the final act?
Most of the things that we agreed on were put on paper, but especially in the final round, when it was about the most heated, and the final round was about bans and about this rule of law issues and artificial intelligence. In this final round, we basically negotiated, you know, like on an, how to say, on an open heart, you know, so everyone was in the room, everyone was discussing different aspects, because we knew this is the final and most precarious, most difficult part, because it could explode, it could implode, and it could result into effect. So some of these issues were put like in different pieces of paper. So there are like different traces of what we agreed on. And now the technical staff from Council, from the Parliament, our people, staffers, from different parties of the Parliament, they're all sitting together and finalizing certain things that were still not clarified, some of the definitions that were not clarified. But most of this, we do have now some heated debates on certain aspects, and we restore the actual will of our agreement, because there were just too many people in the room and they all remember what was said, and they rely on each other on what was said.
Yeah. But when will the act be readable for everyone in Europe? When do you think that we can have the paper, the 260 pages, for example, and we can read it? What do you think?
We never know. My prediction is that this week there will be technical, I mean, it's not prediction, it's information. There are technical meetings every day. Next week would be, we hope that by the end of this week, all the technical issues have been settled and there is some sort of agreement that will be then codified and proved, etc. And within the upcoming weeks, we would have a working version of the text as such. But this is a lengthy process, and then this has to go through the legal lawyers, through the language lawyers, as they're called here, linguistic lawyers, who go through it and say, you know, there is a bunch of people who are not native speakers, who are many of them are not lawyers or not technicians, and then they will kind of like adjust the language, and then it will be translated in the 27 or so languages, official languages, and then it will come to decisions by the parliament, the council, etc.
All right. My last question would be, when you look back on the whole process of the AI Act, so what I realized is, of course, you know, what you said, we have to discuss risk, and there's always a compromise. Of course, we want the less, other want more and stuff like that. But what I think, what was interesting was that it was the public debate about the AI Act was very risk driven. So you know that artificial intelligence is risk. Yeah, and would you agree with that? I get that we have to define risk and we have to make it in a certain framework, but that the discussion about the act was too risk focused and not discussing chances there. Would you, how would you see this?
I think that's normal, because we as humanity and as society are confronted with totally new developments. And I usually say, you know, the fascinating process, and I'm so happy and grateful to have been part of it. What we were doing here is operationalizing philosophical dilemmas into a law. Because many of those things, I mean, if you read accounts on how the altruists in Silicon Valley started, and then they became market-driven, you know, so between ethics and market forces, between humanity and technology, these are the dilemmas that are philosophical. You should be a philosopher to deal with that. And we have to put it into legal texts. And this is fascinating. And that's why I understand that the first impulse of a society is to say, oh my God, what is coming? How will it affect me? And of course, the first impulse is to look at risks. And I think this is justified. This is right. What we shouldn't lose sight of is how this is an opportunity as well. You know, you cannot legislate. It's very difficult to legislate opportunities. It's easier to legislate risks, because legislation is about control. I think that opportunities should be supported with other means, with financial support, with creating safeguards and safe spaces for startups, and creating and attracting labor force that we desperately need in this segment. So it's a tango. Yeah, we will not be able to dance it only with regulation. It should be regulation and support together. And I think now that we have regulated, it should be the hour, the time, the momentum for supporting vigorously this technology in Europe.
Sergey Lagodinsky, this ends our dance together, at least for today. Thank you so much for taking the time for the European AI Forum, and we hope to see you soon and discuss the real implementation of it.
Thank you. Looking forward.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome back to the 8th edition of the European AI Forum. And I have now the distinguished pleasure to talk with one of the most successful European AI companies in this year. Hello, Tobias Haar, General Counsel from Aleph Alpha.
Hello, Daniel. Nice to meet you.
Nice to see you again, my friend. And I think it was quite a crazy, successful year for Aleph Alpha, wasn't it?
It was a very successful and very intense year for Aleph Alpha and also for myself. It has been pretty heavy in the past weeks. The financing round we have been able to successfully accomplish, sign and close beginning of November, and also the AI Act. I guess this is one of the most relevant topics for this industry in the year 2023.
Talking about a little bit about the financial round, there were a lot of numbers out there, like in the hundreds of millions. For someone who is not into financing and stuff like that, how would you use this money? Is it all in personnel stuff? Is it in buying new technical equipment? For what is the money for?
I mean, this is the question I can answer in the same manner as any successful startup that has successfully closed a financing round would answer. So for sure, we need additional resources. We need human resources. We need people to support us in our mission to further develop large language models, basic technology in the AI space, AI models as they will be called or are called and also will be called in the AI Act, but also to increase our product layer in order to come up with additional products in the coming months and years. This is one. And two, as we all know, the training and operation of AI is heavily depending on hardware, GPUs, that would sit in a data center, such as in our data center in Bayreuth in Germany. We are independent in that regard, but still we need additional hardware in order to leverage it more than we did in the past. This is also what this money will be for, and the rest is up to discussion with our shareholders. And there's more to come from Aleph Alpha for sure.
There's one thing which I'm interested in Aleph Alpha. In my recollection, you have many projects, for example, with German governments, German states and stuff like that. Do you have also a European strategy to get your language model out there to other European states?
For sure. We are working and are already implementing our go-to-market strategies. And as I just said, there's more to come in that regard.
We really hope so, and we're really happy to have a very successful European startups, especially with large language models. Of course, there are other ones out there like Mistral in France, but I can only emphasize how very important Aleph Alpha is for the European AI landscape. Talking about AI in Europe, my friend, how would you see the agreement on the AI Act, in special for Aleph Alpha? There was a lot of discussion about generative AI and foundation models. How are you happy or unhappy with the results coming out of Brussels?
I mean, as a company that is affected by regulation, you can never be happy with regulation, especially when it's additional regulation you have not been exposed to before. So happiness is the wrong word. What we can say is that we, and this is also our official position, we moderately welcome the political compromise on the EU AI Act. If you accept the fact that there needs to be a regulation on AI in Europe, at some point these negotiations, the political compromise needs to come. And what we have seen last Friday is that the trilogue parties, they really gave themselves a hard time to arrive at an agreement. What the agreement all comprises, there's some leaks on documents. There is people that inform about this or that element that has now found its way or not found its way into the AI Act regulation. This remains to be seen. I have not seen yet a final text of this political compromise. That is, and this is important to state, this is this is only a milestone. We have not seen the final agreement, the final adoption of the AI Act last Friday. We have seen a political compromise between mostly the Council and the European Parliament on what they now need to fine-tune and work on should be covered by the AI Act. So in the coming weeks, there's a legal technical implementation of this political compromise into legal text, into the final text of this regulation, which will then be put forward to the plenary in the European Parliament. I expect sometime late winter or early spring for adoption by the European Parliament, after the Council needs to confirm the vote taken by the European Parliament. Then it will be published in the official bulletin of the European Union, will come into force, and depending on what we are looking at, after a certain transition period of time, come into effect. So there's still a little more work to be done on the AI Act, and some time to pass and lapse before what then will be part of the AI Act will come into effect.
I would completely agree, because we haven't seen the final paper there. I talked to Mistral yesterday, and they say, well, nearly the same thing as you, but they are especially worried about the transparency regulations. Is this something that you're not afraid, but you're worried about too, because we don't know what kind of transparency is required from you as a foundation model?
Yeah. Transparency always, from the perspective of an industry player such as Aleph Alpha or our friends in Paris from Mistral, is always a tricky thing, because whenever you are required to provide transparency on something that you otherwise would not disclose to the public or to other parties or to a authority, then you need to consider, what does this mean in terms of trade secrets? Mm-hmm. The way how we write up our algorithms, how we collect our training data, how we train, on what machines we train, how much energy is being used. This is all relevant information for someone aiming at reverse engineering how Aleph Alpha constructs, designs, trains, and publishes its products. And this is something we have been also emphasizing in our discussions with other stakeholders in the past weeks, that the trade secret protection, we need to protect our trade secrets much more than large incumbents, because if large incumbents are to disclose this information, this is not necessarily something you can copy and paste, because you don't have the financial or technical means to do so with, I don't know, 20,000 GPUs versus the little number of GPUs we have at our discretion. So it is more relevant and is more critical for smaller and mid-sized companies in the international context, such as Mistral and Aleph Alpha, to have their trade secrets be protected at all times. And this is where I see a significant risk in the coming regulation.
There was also from the Spanish presidency, and which was implemented, this called two-tier approach with flops, stuff like that. Could you explain to our viewers who are not into foundation models itself, what this means for Aleph Alpha? Does this implicate you, and where do you see the chances or the risks of this two-tier approach that is now, how can I say, in a political agreement?
When you look at AI model design and development and marketing, as a company such as Aleph Alpha, I mean, we also strive for excellence, also in the sense of developing models that are capable of A, competing, and B, providing the services they need to provide in a given use case scenario. So this is what speaks against a two-tier approach from our perspective, because it is not something that will only affect the large players. I mean, we have yet to analyze the criteria that, or the thresholds that this should decide upon whether you fall into the lower or the upper tier. but it's not something that is not of any relevance to Aleph Alpha or even Mistral. It should not be, because we need to compete with the big players also in terms of capabilities of models. And what we believe is that the risk-based approach of the AI Act, which makes perfect sense, and any regulation needs to be risk-based, should rather focus and concentrate on the concrete application, on the concrete use cases, versus regulating technology as such, which is also why we have been supporters of this general idea of not regulating foundation model technology at all, but to, on a risk-based approach basis, regulate AI systems, i.e. that is the concrete application and use case.
Tobias, thank you so much for taking the time of addressing us in the European AI Forum. We wish you all the best for the next years, and we are very happy that you're a part of us, of KI Bundesverband, and of course in the EAIF, and we wish you the very best for the next year.
Thank you so much, Daniel, and Merry Christmas and a good New Year start into 2024.
Thank you to you too.
So we heard a lot from the market and from the European Parliament. Daniel, are you in the picture again to discuss what the European AI Forum thinks about the AI Act?
I think it's complex. I have to say, I'm happy that it's over. Yeah, in this case, it really is. I think it's problematic that, and what I talked, and I think Tobias Haar mentioned it also, to put technology into legal framework is very complicated. And what I see in these 2 years, what happened is that a lot of people legislated about AI who are no AI experts. And I think that sometimes it would have been better listening more to the companies who provide AI, who do it day by day of doing this. So I would say I'm a little bit mixed. I'm happy that it's finished. I think that in retrospect, there are many things which could have gone better. What is your opinion, Jeannette?
Well, it's a mixed bag of emotions, but thinking about the European AI Forum, we've been working together since 3 years with all the other partners and members, and have actually been part of the discussions from day one. I don't know if you remember, but for me, it was a very landmark moment to host the first roundtable with Kilian Gross on the AI Act about 1 week after this first draft was published. And also, I think we, as European AI Forum, had quite some achievements in representing the industry and the industry voices in this process, and also making the AI Act more friendlier to AI made in Europe. And I think Sergey Lagodinsky made a very good point, that kind of like it's not the primary objective or their objective of regulation at all to kind of like drive innovation. Innovation is something of the markets. Regulation, as much as we need, as little as possible, and is there to, of course, prevent risks, provide a level playing field, and support the market in reducing barriers. And I think this is something that the AI Act can achieve for Europe. But of course, it's not the whole equation, right? So there is still a lot of work to be done. And of course, we will see how the AI Act is received by the market, by the industry in Europe and beyond. But you know me, I'm still optimistic that we can make this work, and that Europe has a lot of potential and opportunities lying ahead, also in the field of AI, even if the reactions, of course, to the AI Act are a little bit mixed. And also probably because we do not know what's in the final text yet. So I think everyone is scanning press statements, trying to find out what is part of the deal, what fell out of it. And I think we might be a little bit surprised when we see the final agreement. But still, my optimism holds. Let's see what comes.
Well, hope for the best, expect the worst is quite a good life motto. What I want to say is, we have, like you said, and so rightly said, and thank you, Jeannette, of doing all the legal framework for the European AI Forum for that, and we really appreciate what you did there. One thing that I want to tell, if anyone from the European Commission and stuff is watching, which I guess they do. They said, yeah, we do the regulation, but we will also do funding and tenders and explaining the AI Act, also with financial means. We really hold you to that promise, yeah? Because you can't bail out on this, dear friends, on the Commission and the parliamentary side, yeah? There has to be a way of explaining, but because the problem, and I mentioned it with Sergey Lagodinsky, is the whole discussion about AI was about risk. Yeah, when you go out there, people are saying AI is risk. AI, guys, is not risk. AI is a chance. AI is a possibility. AI is a tool. Yeah, and we have to go away from this risk discussion into the chances discussion. And I think this will be very important. But as you said so rightly, Jeannette, we don't know what's in the text really, yeah? And I think it will be very interesting when the final draft is out there, what it will concretely say about it. So what do you think going forward, Jeannette? Can the EAIF do in point of implementing AI, the AI Act and stuff like that?
Yes, definitely. That's something you are a champion of, moving to the implementation side, onboarding the industry, and really helping and getting things going. I think we achieved a milestone in the agreement on the AI Act that, as you said, the process is done. It was a marathon. We heard that also from our guests. Now it's time to implement that, which will, I think, an even longer marathon. And I think the European AI Forum is actually poised to support the industry here in translating the legal texts into practice, supporting the industry and being an enabler here, as I think we've been in the policy discussion, now going all the miles and all the way to the implementation. So that is actually my vision for the European AI Forum, or part of it for going forward. Daniel, what are the topics that are close to your heart and in your agenda for the future of the European AI Forum?
Well, I would say that if I may just say one point on the point of implementation. What I think is enormously important is that, of course, the AI regulation is the same set of rules in whole of Europe. But with the control and the sanctioning of the AI Act seems to be done perhaps by national states. The most important part about the European AI Act is that we have one set of rules from the west of France to the east of Lithuania. Yeah. But if we have 27 different regimes in controlling, in assessing, in different organizing structures of getting results and compliance costs and stuff like that, then the whole AI Act is nonsense. Yeah. So what we have to see is that a startup in Ljubljana, a startup in Warsaw has the same processes in implementing when they're doing high-risk things, for example, as a startup in Vienna, as a startup in Brussels, as a startup in Paris. So this is one thing that we really will have a keen look on. And if this is not implemented, I think we will be very loud about that.
Thank you for making this very clearly. You know, we lawyers, you lose the ability to make points that poised in law school. So we need to be more on the diplomatic side, but I fully agree that it will be key that we have uniform implementation. Otherwise, we have fragmentation as we have it now, and even worse, because it will enable forum shopping and actually not create what the AI Act is aiming. A general market for AI in Europe, reducing barriers actually. And also kind of like with the authorities, we see already first steps, for example, in Spain with the building of a Spanish AI authority. We see different trends throughout Europe, looking at technology infrastructure, authorities that may be enforcing the AI Act. Some national states are thinking about putting it into the competency of the data protection authorities. So it will be key to align here. And this is my wish or my hope for the European AI Office. So the AI Office that is planned under the AI Act, that it will be some harmonization here, some coordination on a European level to really make this one regulation for everybody.
I would agree on that.
Wonderful. So I think now it's time for our next agenda point. And we're very happy to continue the discussion with a member of the European Parliament, Matjaž Nemec. He's been a member of the European Parliament since 2022 and was a member of the government in Slovenia. And he will be sharing with us his view on the AI Act, also his approach to risk, but also his approach to innovation. Thank you very much for joining us for this 8th edition. The floor is yours. Linas, please. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed participants of the 8th European Artificial Intelligence Forum, it's my pleasure and honor to address you. In the dynamic landscape of AI, my political group, the Socialists and Democrats, has a clear stance. No AI without ethics, legal safeguards and fundamental rights. Embarking on the implementation of the Act requires a strong and clear set of laws. Europeans want rules that protect basic rights, follow ethical principles, provide legal safeguards and make clear who's responsible. The suggested Act is seen as the tool to shape how artificial intelligence is used in Europe, which will without doubt set the tone for the others. To implement a trustful and ethical artificial intelligence landscape, Europe must invest significantly in the robotics and AI to drive innovation guided by public interest in line with European values and legislation. It will also help catch up with other landing countries in the field. While I welcome a risk-based approach, we, the Socialists and Democrats, advocate for a set of common principles to apply to all AI systems to ensure ethical and trustful practices through to the Union. Transparency, clarity, and the prohibition of discriminatory practices are vital. The AI Act must mandate fundamental rights impact assessments for high-risk systems used by public authorities and companies, ensuring protection against discrimination. Which leads me to our next concern, addressing the challenges of algorithmic bias and generative artificial intelligence. Correct and verified information is more important than ever. In politics, making informed decisions is of course crucial, and generative AI, if not handled with care, it could affect the public's ability to make well-informed choices. It's everyone's responsibility, developers, policymakers, and society as a whole, to make sure information is truthful. We need to actively ensure accuracy, especially in politics, to support democratic values and keep trust in the information we get. Finally, as artificial intelligence increasingly integrates into our labor market, the primary concern for Social Democrats is to emphasize corporate digital responsibility, liability rules, and consumer rights. Our goal is clear: prioritize people over profits. Workers' rights and dignity must be safeguarded. Any worker harmed by artificial intelligence should have the right to seek justice and ensure corporations face consequences. It's time to hold big corporations accountable and protect the backbone of our economy, of course, the hard-working Europeans. Dear participants, let's all work together to support AI in Europe that puts people first. We need to find a balance between ethics, economic growth, social unity, and basic rights. This way, AI can bring positive contributions to our lives while staying true to our values. Dear organizers, guests, participants, I wish you a successful and inspiring conference. Thank you so much and good luck.
Thank you very much for your contribution and sharing your views, and also making the point that the AI journey is something that concerns all of us, and that is a collaborative and collective approach for us to manage this as good as possible. I have the honor now to introduce our next keynote speaker, a very high-profile speaker from Germany, the Minister of Education and Science of Germany, Bettina Stark-Watzinger, which is member of the economist and politician party, Free Democrat Party, and has been serving since 2021.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is already the 8th European AI Forum. But you probably remember well that artificial intelligence for a long time was an insider's realm only, something for specialists. And then came ChatGPT, a new dimension. At home, at work, in school. In the meantime, everybody knows AI is changing our world. As I see it, it is the most important disruptive technology of our time, a key technology. I am convinced that, first and foremost, it opens up opportunities for new products and services, for new businesses. It gives us the chance to make the world a really better place. And that's the aim of our efforts. We want to keep up, to be at the very forefront when it comes to smart development of AI. We want to promote and use it responsibly. We want strong AI with clear rules, AI made in Europe. Germany, Europe, we must take the lead in the AI revolution. AI research in Germany is already top class. Not least of all, thanks to our AI competence centers. Thanks to additional 150 AI professorships. We have many bright minds burning to help shape the course of AI. And especially among your ranks, businesses which see that potential. I quote from a current statement by the president of Bitkom, the German Association for Information Technology. It has never before been as easy and low cost for businesses to use AI and gather initial experience. All this shows that Germany and Europe are not lagging behind in AI. If anything, we have a solid foundation. But things are developing at breakneck speed, which is why we developed the AI Action Plan. The plan provides fresh impetus for the German and European AI ecosystem. To name just one example, Jülich is where the Jupiter supercomputer will go into operation next year. Not only is it the first exascale computer in Europe, it is actually one of the most powerful AI computers in the world, boasting 24,000 GPUs. A supercomputer which we want to use together with our partners in Europe. Yes, we must become even better, especially when it comes to transfer and value creation. And that's where we need to catch up. But that's exactly what we are working on through our Robotics Action Plan to become even stronger in an area where we already are strong. Hence our AI workshop in Brussels next year to promote even closer European cooperation. Because we know climate, energy, health, there are so many areas for which AI holds enormous potential. At schools and in continuing education, for example, for digital and digitally supported learning, it opens up huge opportunities. Yes, the Federal Ministry of Education and Research, we see ourselves as a ministry that promotes these opportunities. We are driving innovation in AI forward together with business and society. With a love of freedom, entrepreneurial spirit, optimism about the future. That's how we are shaping AI together. The European AI Forum is an important partner in this effort and an important forum for debate at the same time. So I wish you all continued success.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bettina Stark-Watzinger, and also thank you very much for acknowledging the efforts of the European AI Forum. We are very happy that you took the time to participate in our 8th edition. Our next keynote speaker will be Dr. Aida Kamišalić. She is State Secretary of the Ministry of Digital Transformation of the Republic of Slovenia, and is almost has 20 years of experience in research and the technology field, and was awarded Woman of the Year 2019 in Science in Slovenia. Thank you for joining us. The floor is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, dear participants of the conference. It is my honor and great pleasure to address you at this very important event dedicated to the most pressing issues shaping the European AI ecosystem. Today, we are facing unprecedented challenges and transformation of the world's economic, environmental, and social systems. I firmly believe that artificial intelligence and new technologies offer significant potential to overcome global challenges and improve the quality of our lives in many fields. AI can create many benefits, such as better healthcare, safer and cleaner transport, more efficient manufacturing, and cheaper and more sustainable energy. In Slovenia, artificial intelligence is a key area for the digital transformation of our society. We have more than 40 years of research experience and more than 30 years of higher education experience in AI. Artificial intelligence is also featured in our key development documents, such as the Digital Slovenia 2030, adopted by the government in March this year, the National Program for Artificial Intelligence, and the National Digital Decade Plan. The National Program for Artificial Intelligence defines objectives and actions in 6 priority areas: health, Industry 4.0, public administration, language technology, sustainable food production, and environment and spatial planning. Our vision is to ensure trustworthy AI that is in the service of humanity. The National Center for Artificial Intelligence that we are setting up will put Slovenia among the most advanced countries by promoting research and development of artificial intelligence and its innovative use. We have 3 European digital innovation hubs that help us further expand and deploy innovative AI solutions. We are aware that we need robust ethical guidelines and regulation to ensure that AI technologies respect democracy and human rights, avoid biases and discrimination, and ensure responsible use of AI technologies globally. When we design and develop AI, all stakeholders should be included to avoid biased AI, especially women, girls, people of color, persons with disabilities, displaced populations, and other underrepresented groups. We can witness that AI can be used in a malicious way to bring harm, intentionally or unintentionally, both to individuals and larger groups, economies, and societies. It is therefore vital for us to define how we want for AI to be developed and used. Also, we need to strike a balance between, on the one hand, the support to innovation and solutions that enhance the quality of our lives or increase economic competitiveness, and on the other hand, detrimental effects that misuse of such powerful technologies may bring. Our vision is to provide our citizens with the digital and functional skills they need to be able to cope with all the upcoming challenges. We are active at the European Union level. We work closely with the OECD, the Council of Europe, UNESCO, and other international organizations. We believe that international organizations that deal with AI should all work closely together. In this way, different approaches and AI acts will be compatible and interconnected. We are organizing the Global Forum on the Ethics of Artificial Intelligence from 4th to 6th of February next year, together with UNESCO, where high-level decision makers, industry leaders, representatives of scientific and research institutions, as well as non-government organizations will search for common solutions to challenges of ethics and trustworthiness of AI. Also, we have great expectations from the European Union Act on Artificial Intelligence and the Convention on AI to be adopted by the Council of Europe. Both have great potential of becoming a global standard setter and could influence legal orders beyond Europe. On 8th of December 2023, the Council of the European Union and the European Parliament finally reached an agreement on the Artificial Intelligence Act. This act is the first legislation in the world to regulate the use of AI by introducing safeguards. The rules establish obligations for providers and users depending on the level of risk from artificial intelligence. With the AI Act, we want to make sure that AI systems used in the EU will be safe, transparent, traceable, non-discriminatory, and environmentally friendly. The fundamental rights and EU values will be respected, and investment and innovation on AI in Europe will be stimulated. Ladies and gentlemen, AI-driven technology is entering more and more aspects of every individual's life. It has reached new capacities and offers immense potential in many fields. By setting the standards, we can pave the way to ethical technology worldwide and ensure that the EU rules will intervene where strictly needed, when the safety and fundamental rights of citizens are at stake. Thank you, and I wish you all a very productive and enlightening conference.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to a very interesting edition of the European AI Act, AI Forum. I'm so sorry. Too much act in my brain. Yes. What our next point is, one of our dearest members is Digital Poland. And as you probably have seen, there were elections in Poland, and not of getting into too much into European politics and where election and stuff had. But what I think we can definitely say is that the new government, which was elected yesterday, has a far more Europe-friendly outreach and outlook than the last administration had. And for this, we are very happy. As Europe, as people who are working together in a European AI community. And for that, I want to welcome on stage our friend, board member of the European AI Forum, and good friend, Piotr. Piotr, can you hear me? Can you see us? Genau, there he is. Hello, can we have a little sound check? Because today is a little wonky and in this case.
I can hear you. I can hear you pretty well.
Okay, thank you so much. Piotr, the floor is yours for the next 10 minutes to the Polish ecosystem in AI. Thank you so much for being here. The floor is yours.
Yeah, first, let me just confirm what you just say. I mean, the new government is really open to AI, and upcoming new vice premier responsible for digitalization of the country stated that AI will be one of the pillars of the digitalization of Poland. I would like to share today findings from our report, and let me start to share the screen that we done this year. So very briefly, let me tell you that. Can you hear me? Yeah, pretty sure. I'm pretty sure you should see the slides. So I wanted to share the results and why we are sharing the results, because you can't implement technology without having the acceptance of the public. So we as a Digital Poland has been studying the attitude toward technology for the past 5 years. And this year AI was our topic. So technologia w służbie społeczeństwa is actually tech for society. So let me start very briefly with the Poles knowledge of AI. We actually ran a test and we asked people, showing them some solutions. Is AI used in that kind of solution? And as you can see from the slide, people think that AI is embedded in virtual assistants, autopilots, translation of the text. But if you go down to the bottom of the table, then you will see that most of the people, because it's only 42 or 47%, think that AI is used by spam filters in your email or weather forecast. So I think it shows you that people actually don't think that AI is algorithm. It's rather something automatic. We also presented the definition of AI to polls, the definition of AI created by OECD, and we asked, have you encountered or used artificial intelligence? And 56% of people responded yes. In terms of perception, I'm pretty sure it's a good result because we ask what's your approach toward AI in your everyday life or work, and 41% of polls said I tolerate, and 34% of polls said I accept, and only 15%, which is 4 plus 11, disapprove or strongly oppose AI. What is interesting is actually we have a perfect mix of actually opinions on the balance of benefits and risk of AI. We made 3 statements. One of them was, does the benefits outweigh the risk? And 24% said yes. Does the risk outweigh the benefits? And 27% said yes. And as you can see, 35% said the risk and benefits are balanced. So the society is actually pretty. Society has a pretty mixed opinions on the balance and risk. You heard in the media many times that there's going to be a Terminator, especially Terminator 2. So we actually try to measure that such a perception in the public. So we ask the public, the polls, what are the possibilities, to happen within the next 10 years, major crises like global risk, natural disaster, a food crisis, all that stuff. And at the bottom, bottom right, you will see that only 15% of the polls actually think that extermination of humans by artificial intelligence will happen within next 10 years. Just to put that number also in the perspective, 15% is also the same almost number in our different research. The 15% of polls think that 5G will kill you, or, for example, 70% of polls think that we didn't land it on the moon. So it's actually very close to that other, I would say, fake news. In terms of trust, so what are the tendencies of Polish society? So 33% on the left side, 33% of the society is willing to generally trust AI systems. A little bit more, because 41% actually rely on the information provided by the artificial intelligence, like recommendation in streaming services like Spotify, etc. And 31% want to share the information with AI, which again I would underline that almost 40% of polls doesn't have any opinion on the topic, which means there's a huge need for education. In terms of development, from I would say trustworthy perspective, we asked the question: is AI being developed today with proper ethical principles in mind? And again, perfect split. 50% of polls, so 1 out of 2, doesn't have a clue. I mean, like neither agree or disagree. 28 say yes, and 24 say no. So again, huge potential for education and discussion. Then we ask, what need to be, where we need to focus on in terms of, development, in order for the public to find AI trustworthy. And, this is one of the major slide in my presentation, because it's something different than AI Act actually is doing. When you look at the biggest percentages, like 40% on your left side, like the main thing is proper human supervision. The other is ensuring data privacy and resistance to hackers. If you go to the bottom, then accountability, and possibility to challenge the results, risk management, mitigation strategy, equity, fairness, inclusion, all that stuff is actually below 20%. So people focus on privacy, human supervision, and cybersecurity. That's three major parts where Poles want to focus on in terms of development. In terms of, I would say, management, and you know, I'm pretty sure all of us, also our audience, heard about this huge document which happened, I think, in spring, in April, March, where there was a letter to stop the development of AI. So we actually asked that question. On your left side, you will see the results like 17 plus 8, so 25% of Poles, so 1 out of 4, agree to stop the development of the AI. But on the other hand, we ask the second question, should we speed up the development for the benefit of the society? And 6 plus 27, so 23% of Poles said, yes, we should speed up. So again, mixed results. Half of the population doesn't have a clue. 25% want to stop, 33% want to increase. Then we ask, what are the institutions with the greatest confidence in the development and use of AI? And again, very interesting results. On the upper left, you will see that public universities are on the first place. Then you get intergovernmental research organization like CERN in Switzerland, I guess. Then, which is astonishing for me, it's Meta, Google, Microsoft as a big tech. And when you go to the bottom, you will see like Polish companies, so 20%, Polish government, 11%, local NGOs like Digital Poland, I would say, is 10%. So people, in terms of confidence, focus on international organization, international corporation, and public universities. That's their confidence. In terms of regulation, who should be responsible? Then again, public universities, intergovernmental bodies like AI Office, then you get a BEREC. BEREC is an intergovernmental office for telecoms, local regulators like UK in Poland. But again, on the fifth place, you see Google, Meta, Microsoft, and Amazon. And at the bottom, you see my local authority or local NGO. So international organization, universities, then again, big tech, and then local governments. In terms of impact, we asked the question, what is your opinion on the AI in terms of context of job creation? Will it eliminate the jobs or not? And what is interesting that, you know, 18%, only 18% of Poles agree that AI will create more jobs than eliminate. And astonishingly, 42% of Poles disagree, which means they think that AI will actually maybe, you know, will uncreate, let's say, the jobs. So that's very interesting finding. And when we ask whether your work or your family member will disappear, then we see greater confidence, because 29% said that no, my job will not be displaced and will not cease. Then we asked one of our last question was about how to use AI in decision making at work, at corporations, companies, etc. And on the left side, we ask, what is the percentage how AI should be worked? What is the intensity? So 14% said there shouldn't be any AI, which means your manager, your director shouldn't, you know, make decision on AI. But 27 and then 17 said that it should be up to 25 or 50%. And the same threshold is on the right side, because we also ask, you know, how employees should use AI. And we see that it should be a co-pilot, a supportive function instead of like a full AI job. And regulation, which is very important. I think one of the last topic here. Daniel mentioned that we are happy that we have this regulation, but I would underline that Poles would love to have this regulation, because 41% of the polls on the left side, you see new regulation are necessary. 22% only said that entrepreneurs, etc., should be allowed for further development as a so-called self-regulation. And only 9% said there is no need for regulation. Again, 28% I have no opinion. And this is the most, I think, important slide for us as an ecosystem, because we ask the question, should we regulate AI in the EU, even at the cost of losing development to China and United States? And believe me or not, 46% of polls said, yes, we should regulate significantly AI, even at the cost of losing development and becoming dependent on the US and China. 46%, again, 41% doesn't have a clue, but only 13 of polls disagree. And what should regulation be? What should be the topic of regulation? Then again, on the three places: cybersecurity, human supervision, and privacy. On the bottom, you would see trustworthy AI, accountability, fairness. I already mentioned that, so I will skip it. In terms of copyright, that's an interesting case, because we ask whether AI should copy data from, freely from the internet. And 38 of polls, so almost 40% no, said no, we need to pay for the property rights. Only 24% agree, 37% doesn't have a clue. So huge space for education. And last slide, I guess, is about public, how public institutions should use AI. So long story short is that only 6% at the bottom, only 6% said that AI should not be used at public institution. But if you go into details, you will see that people want to use AI at the public in very simple cases, like automatic alerting of citizens to weather disasters, providing information, etc. If we go to making decisions, so at the bottom, like making decision on access to social benefits, like child benefits, allowances, pensions, or making decisions on admission of pupils, then people disagree. Only 12% of polls would love to use that kind of solution by public. So that's all from my side. Back to you, Jeannette, and Daniel, thanks for having me and giving me the opportunity to share some interesting findings from Poland.
Thank you, Piotr, for these interesting insights. Thank you for doing this work, and I hope you can share the facts of the study also after the conference to the wider public, because I think some very important points were made. Thank you very much for joining us today. See you soon.
See you soon. Bye.
Now, I have the great pleasure to move on from Poland to Croatia. CroAI, of course, also being one of the members of the European AI Forum and very, very much involved in the field of education and the future of AI. And our next keynote speaker will be Juraj Bilic, the Vice CEO of CARNet. You will talk to us about AI in education, and in particular, how you're using AI to better education and how to build the future generations in this AI-powered world. I will give the floor to you to share more about your project, to share more about yourself. Thank you for being online and joining us live today.
Thank you, Jeannette, for inviting me here. Thank you, European AI Forum. My name is Juraj Bilic, Deputy Director of Croatian Academic and Research Network, the state agency in charge of digitalization of the education system. I will present our new project, BRAIN, with capital A and I, which is there to stimulate use, but also understanding of AI in education. But before that, I will just play a short video of the project that just finished 2 months ago. It is an e-schools project, 217 million euro project of digital transformation of Croatian schools, which serves as a foundation for the BRAIN project. So as the clip is in English, I will talk over the video. So let me share the screen with you. So this is a short presentation of e-schools project, funded through ESF and ERDF, and the biggest per capita investment in education in Croatia ever. These are numbers of schools, pupils, and teachers. We first had a pilot phase from 2015 to 2018, 151 schools. And in the second phase, which you can see the number, we involved all the schools in Croatia. So 100% of the Croatian schools were involved. Some testimonials from teachers and principals here. So what did schools get? The schools got digitally equipped schools, presentation classroom, interactive classroom, Wi-Fi's. We also provided application, public services, GovTech to lower the burden on administration. We educated digitally competent teachers. We provided recommendation on the digital maturity for the schools. We provided over 85,000 laptops. All of our teachers got state-of-the-art laptop. We provided learning scenarios, digital education material for over 90 subjects in Croatian schools. All 5,000 workshops for teachers. Every teacher attended those workshops. They were in 3 ways: conducted, face-to-face, virtual, and webinars. Students got super fast, ultra fast internet in the schools, equipment to use in the classroom, digital education material. 20,000 classrooms were equipped. Number of communication containers. And length of cables we provided to the schools. How much we crossed over the country, and nobody was injured during this project. The project was awarded by the European Commission in 2020 by DG Regio, the best project in Europe. So these are the e-schools that served as a foundation for the BRAIN project, which I will now show to you. So let me skip to the BRAIN project. So let's stop sharing. Before I start the presentation, BRAIN project is funded through ESF fund. It started 2 months ago. Will last for 6 years, and we really want to make sure that Croatian students, pupils receive the cutting-edge education regarding the artificial intelligence. So do you see it?
Yes, works perfectly.
AI is actually Croatians' answer to what the modern world has put before us. This is the idea of what we want to achieve through the project, but I will focus on the main pillars of the project for you to better understand what Croatia is now going to do. These are 5 pillars of our project: curriculum and education, research, smart recommendation system, something that is now finally enabled, in our opinion, by large language models, and obviously cybersecurity and network. Regarding curriculum and education, we will develop 2 elective subjects for primary school and for secondary school, where we will teach our students about AI, about algorithms, about how algorithms shape their perception of the world, how social media influences their perception of the world, because we really want to make sure that our students understand when they connect and when they are online, that not all the information is beneficial for them, to develop critical thinking. And why we chose 7th and 8th grade for the primary school, because there is a global recommendation not to use large language models, not to expose children below the age of 13 to large language models. So this is why it will address pupils in the 7th and 8th grade of elementary school. At this moment, we already appointed a group for development of curricula. The first experimental implementation of this curricula will start in the next school year 2024-2025. We will also provide teaching for interested teachers. What we here also have done is that we are not targeting only teachers of informatics. We are going to offer this and involve all the interested teachers who want to implement this elective subject in their schools. So, because we believe that information literacy, AI literacy, is not something that should only be done or understood by teachers of informatics. Research is another pillar of our project. This is going to be a longitudinal research, 6-year long. We already have a partner university, public university in Croatia. And what we want to really achieve is to set recommendations, not only for children, but also for schools and parents. This is something that is very often missing from any research on how technology influences young, that we forget that some of the, let's say, bad habits, dependencies, even addiction on technology doesn't really develop within the school. It develops outside of the school, it develops at homes, and that is why it is very important for us to really provide also recommendations for parents. The other key aspect is that recommendations will also be divided on regarding what age you belong to. So different recommendations will be provided for children from the age 1 to 4, different one for the set of children from not age grades 1 to 4, then for from 5th to 8th grade of primary school, and the third set of recommendation for the students attending higher education. What is also important that all of this is interconnected. So our research will provide a feedback loop to the curricula I already mentioned. So based on the findings of the research, we will update those curricula for these 2 elective subjects every 2 years. This is something more about how research is going to be conducted. And now we come also to perhaps the icing on the cake of the project. We will develop smart recommendation system. What we really believe with our experts in machine learning and deep learning is that finally, through large language models, we will be able to provide something like a personal Aristotle to every pupil, meaning self-paced, adaptive, personalized teaching for every student. Smart recommendation system will be a proactive system. So, some short example: once the teacher provides a grade for any of the knowledge, smart recommendation system will observe from what teacher has graded and what aspects of the knowledge objects he said that student knew or didn't know, will provide the recommendation to the student on what he should do in order to better his grade in the future. So, but this is just one small example of what we are going to do. Within the smart recommendation system, we will develop a speech-to-speech virtual assistant, both mobile-based and desktop-based virtual assistant in form of avatar that will serve like assistant teacher to every of the pupils. And here are some more information about cybersecurity and network security. In essence, cybersecurity is now extremely important, also due to NIS2 directive, but also because in the more connected world and with AI, public data or personal data of pupils and students needs to be really protected as much as possible, and we are providing a very strong focus in this. The same goes for the network aspect of the project. Thank you very much. This was the small presentation of what we are doing at this moment. I see there are some comments, so these are not the questions, but thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'm free to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Juraj, for this important overview, and in particular making the important point of democratization of education, of course, in particular in the field of AI. I'm sure we have a lot of questions and a lot of interest in your project. Unfortunately, I need to be timekeeper. What I suggest is we collect the questions, we link everyone to you and your project, Brain AI, and make the collaboration here, and we'll also specifically promote you and your project on our channel. Thank you very much for sharing this comprehensive overview. It was a great pleasure to have you with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you, Juraj. Best regards to Croatia, and we will be continuing with Croatia. And I have the very, very great pleasure of moderating my colleague Martina Silov from Croatia AI, also a member of the board of the European AI Forum, welcoming her on stage now to discuss another important topic that is closely interlinked with education on AI in various fields, and addressing in particular the question, will there be inequalities, for example, created? Hello, Martina, nice to welcome you on the stage. Since today is Friday the 13th, can you hear us? Can you see us? And can we see you?
I can hear you and I can see you, and I hope you can see and hear me.
Absolutely amazing, fantastic. So it seems like we ironed out the few speed bumps in the beginning. Nice to have you, and in particular your high-profile panel. So we will be joined by Tobias Zwingmann and Andrea Kovic-Vidovic from the European Commission, acting head of media, and have a very interesting discussion on the topic of inequalities, how we can prevent of course, such unfortunate developments, but I will no longer occupy the floor. I give the floor to you, Martina. Thank you very much for introducing this important topic to the agenda of the European AI Forum. Hello, Tobias. Hello, Andrea. Nice to have you. And I will say goodbye for now and give the floor to you.
Thank you, Jeannette. Thank you. It's such a nice introduction from your side always. So thank you for that. Hello from rainy Zagreb. We are really happy to host this panel because we really believe it's going to be an interesting one, definitely provoking one, on a topic that is increasingly shaping our global landscape. Will AI create inequality? Today, we are joined by our two distinguished speakers, panelists, who bring unique perspective on the table. On one side, we have Andrea Čović, acting head of European Commission in Croatia. On the other one, we have a managing partner of an AI startup, AI advisor, Tobias Zwingmann. Sorry if I ruined your last name. So welcome. Welcome. Today, we want to discuss our central focus is on whether AI will create even bigger gap between countries and nations developing and selling AI products versus those that are just purchasing finished AI products. So Tobias, I would like to start with you. You have a lot of experience in AI. You have been in the AI field for years. You're the founder of an AI startup. How do you envision the role of AI in shaping the economic dynamics between nations? And do you believe it has the potential to create even bigger gap between the countries that are developing AI and those that are purchasing, so AI developers and consumers? How do you see that?
Yeah, great question. And first of all, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. It's an awesome event. So yeah, pleasure to share some of the experience that I made in this field here. And maybe to answer this question, let me share a personal anecdote. Like a couple of years back when RAPYD.AI launched, we had a very simple idea, which is making AI services more easily consumable for like consumers, for end users. And funnily, back then, when this company started, these producers of AI services were US companies, and these consumers were actually European companies. And since then, like this was about like 3.5 years ago, I think the gap has even become wider in a sense, because especially with all the latest developments that we see in generative AI, there is definitely a clear gap between one part of the world innovating these models and the other part of the world like figuring out what to do with them or trying to adopt them. And like when we ask the question whether AI generates inequalities or whether there will be disparities between different like players, I think we have to really differentiate between the micro level, like differentiate between people and inequalities between different like people and organizations, for example, and on a macroeconomic scale between nations. And I do see that this like gap on the macroeconomic scale is already happening right now. To be fair, I think it's not that wide in terms of like, oh, it's like it's so huge we can never keep up with that from Europe. But I think the longer we will just continue doing the same things that we currently do into the future, the wider this gap will become. So yeah, I do see this, and yeah, it concerns me really a lot. Like being based in Germany and in the heart of Europe, I think we should be at the forefront of it and not only trying to keep up all the time.
But how? Okay, I absolutely understand it. But how do you see the solution? Of course, you're developing your startup in Europe, like you already said. Like, how are we going to fix this? Because we already see the gap. How are we going to fix it?
You know, I think like in Europe, we have really smart people here who are like not less smart than the people in the US. We just need to let them do their job and need to let them innovate. And we've seen great examples, by the way. A couple of days ago, Mistral from Paris released a huge model, new large language model as an open source system, which created more buzz and more hype than Google's latest Gemini model in the internet. So I think this is exactly how you innovate from Europe. We just need to make sure that we are not now like cutting off this hype by trying to put like lots of burdens and lots of other administrative stuff on these startups and companies like that are pushing the forefronts on this topic, but letting them innovate, for of course in a like responsible and ethical way. But I think we should give people the freedom to do just that. And like, there's not this one example. We have also like big players in Germany, Aleph Alpha, for example, developing a large language model with a lot of funding. So I think like it's not that nothing is happening right now in Europe, right? But we really need to like foster the whole system in a way that we allow this innovation to happen. Right now, my impression is that we try to regulate this kind of over like this these innovations and put more burden on these companies. So these companies are now more like concerned with complying to bureaucracies, complying to different forms they have to fill in order to grow as a startup or grow their AI research, instead of just focusing on making these models better and of course safer and more ethical, usable.
That's a great point. And I love that you mentioned that a lot of things are happening in Europe, because especially in Croatia, we can see, I think Andrea will agree, because when I see the nation that is really, really young, technically actually the country, and we had a huge, I would say, success in tech world and especially in AI, considering that the biggest Croatian exit ever was an AI startup. So a lot of things are creating and developing in Europe. But from a regulatory perspective, how is the European Commission addressing the potential inequalities arising from AI, especially concerning the divide between nations with AI capabilities and those without? What's your thought, Andrea, about this?
Well, I think there's probably, can you hear me? Great, because I tested all three mics and supposedly all three work. Okay, so the best possible week in the year to discuss AI from the point of view of the Commission, because maybe of the previous speakers have touched upon it, but we have just reached a political agreement on the European level. So the European Commission proposed the draft AI Act in April 2021, and it was this week that the European Parliament and the member states, which is the Council, I know it sounds complicated and bureaucratic, but this is what it is, have agreed on the final version of the Artificial Intelligence Act. So it's not a direct answer to a question, because it tries to cover a lot, and I can say that the AI Act is the only such act of its kind. It will be implemented directly in all EU member states. And I can share with you the structure of the act, which, I mean, ultimately my answer will go in the direction of the user or the person or you know, European citizen at the center of interest. So the equality in the context of an individual, not necessarily putting companies first, putting developers first, which is, I know it's something we talk about as well. And there was a lot of criticism regarding the AI Act, that it took such a long time to discuss because there were talks with experts. This is one of the areas in which, you know, the legislators know far less than those who are developing things on the field. And let's not even talk about the speed. But ultimately, philosophically and ethically speaking, it is humans using it. And this was the goal of the act. So minimalization of risks on all levels, banning all unacceptable risks. There's transparency risks included as well. And I don't know if I'm expanding too widely. When you ask, okay, there's an act and what do we do now? There are fines. So companies not complying with the rules of the act, they will be fined. Fines range from 35 million euro to 7% of global annual turnover, whichever is higher. And at the end of the day, maybe the most interesting for a general listener of our conversation is the social scoring, perhaps, by governments or by companies and certain applications of predictive policing. So again, the idea, to come back to your question, to come back to the concept of equality, for everyone to be equally protected from some practices that might not be in the best interest of the users. So I don't know if I've answered or opened more questions. But
yeah, I think we open more questions. Actually,
yeah.
We talked a lot on European AI Forum about like, okay, we will have the act. I think it's great. We all believe it's great that European Commission opened that subject really, really early, that we have been talking about for the last 4 years. But then one question always remains open. When we have the regulation, it will definitely stop a few startups to develop their things, their products and so on. But other countries in the world, like, I don't know, US, China, I don't know, Middle East in general, won't stop the innovation, won't stop the process that they're developing right now, won't stop the projects, products and so on. How will we face like the huge gap between these countries at one point? Because eventually we will be again buying their products like we do it now. Can we I don't know, fix this?
I mean, it's again for me, I guess, the question. So the thing is, when I'm speaking about the reactive nature of what we're doing, every user in Europe will be protected. So every company present on the European market, whether they are from China, whether they are from the US, let's say they will have to behave in a similar manner. And I think we cannot really look at this act in isolation. So in this commission's mandate, there was another important act that was it started its implementation this August, which is the Digital Services Act. And for example, it's covering all very large online platforms and search engines, which means for Europe, this is 45 million users or more. So that means that I would say, and this is how I see the European Commission or the EU's role globally, is to set standards. To set standards. And I know sometimes I've heard often that innovation is kind of slowing down because of some standards, but we need to, sometimes the speed needs to be removed from the table as the point of discussion. And I would say this is, we're talking about children, we are talking about minors, we are talking about the protection. There's AI-based apps that target children with content that's inappropriate. So the picture is global, and the thing is that we are trying, of course, we can only protect EU citizens, but on a global scale, if we go a bit back in time, and if you think of the GDPR, for example, it was met with quite some criticism globally, and the narrative was kind of similar. Yes, you are regulating in Europe, but what about the States? What about China? It's setting standards. It's setting standards. They have to do with human rights. They have to do with the way that people are treated in Europe, citizens are treated in Europe. So I cannot not go to the philosophical level of things as well when we speak about this. So also one point that I'd like to restate, it's difficult, it's hard. With so many experts, young people knowing much more than probably any of us in this conversation, let alone the politicians that are agreeing on the act. But I think that the message is, someone globally has to look at it. This is not set in stone. The AI Act will have to start being implemented within 2 years, other than some exceptions which are more urgent to do with national security, etc. But within the 2 years, probably a lot of things will change. Probably there'll be time for amendments, and it's dynamic. But I would say we have a moral obligations. We have a moral obligation to work on it globally by setting this standard.
Okay, I love that you mentioned GDPR. We often say, GDPR was created on the 30 years of experience, but AI Act is quite new. We don't know a lot about AI, so it will definitely cause a lot of, I would say, not troubles, but difficulties. But I believe that Europe will have a way to solve that, I would say. But Tobias, I have to go back to my first question, because in AI we often draw parallel with like internet and AI. So what internet was for the last 30 years, the next 30 years will be about AI. And we saw certain countries dominating tech markets when internet showed up. And how can we ensure that AI development does not lead to a similar scenario right now, where a few nations control the AI landscape? How we will position European AI landscape on the global market, I would say? How we will end up not just leaving us as a consumers.
If I can just jump in, I know I've spoken a lot, but there's research and development. There's funds that are being invested. They're available there for small companies, for SMEs, covering, developing AI as well. So whenever, if you think of the Commission just regulating, no, there's the Commission redistributing budgets to target it to the areas in which we are lacking. And this is certainly, we have a lot to say on the global market, but someone has to make it easier for companies in Europe and for startups in Europe. So there's, funds being provided. So for starters, sorry for usurping. I think it's time for
No, it's great. But Tobias, I have to ask you then, would you ever apply for a fund that is financed from European Commission or something like that? Is that some easy way to do it as a startup?
So as a startup, if you want to apply for EU funds, you at least have to have a size of, I don't know, having 3 full-time employees just taking care of fund management and stuff like that. And just, it doesn't work out in most cases. But like, I'm fine. This is like, these are also funds very often granted to like larger initiatives. But that being said, that often leads to funds being associated to like the large corporations and their AI spin-offs and their AI startups, because they have the resources to apply for this and go through the systems. I mean, just understanding the whole fund landscape is just like, but that's part of the different conversation, I guess. I would like to come back to the original question. So like what happens and what can we do against this gap? Because I think this gap is actually even more dramatic, because we're not talking about a gap in nations, but even it's not like the US coming up with these models. It's one company in the US or a handful of companies in the US. And even within these companies, like OpenAI is 700 employees. Within these 700 employees, we have probably like 200, 100 people working on ChatGPT. Like these are the ones like, driving the whole thing. And honestly, to these 100 people developing these models over there in San Francisco, they don't care about the EU at all. And I think this is what like differentiates also the AI Act from GDPR, because GDPR was very kind of industry, like the necessity for GDPR was that there were these global companies trying to sell media and advertisement to European customers. And we wanted to regulate this in terms of privacy control and data protection. This was one of the main drivers. In the AI Act now, and with AI, I think the dynamics are different. Like there's so far no direct money involved in selling an AI service directly. AI services are here to improve productivity and to improve productivity gains. So you could ask yourself, like, does the US government, for example, actually have an interest that we in Europe use their models to scale our productivity? Who knows? I don't know. But it's a completely different conversation instead of, okay, here the big media companies wanted to spend their ad money. And then, of course, like we have a couple of 100 million consumers and ad buyers here in Europe as well. So, like regulate that because they wanted access to our market. I think in this case now, they don't really want to have access to our market. Of course, they do it, but you can all like, for example, if you look at every major AI release that is happening right now, Europe is only a second-class citizen. Gemini is being released, not in Europe. Bard was being released, not in Europe. Grok was being released, not in Europe. Right now, we see like a 2-week, 3-week gap between services being released in the US to Europe. But what happens at one point when they say, you know what, oh, we're just not going to release that in Europe? Why? We are not earning any money from it, and like it's not really on our main strategic agenda to do this. What do we do then? And I think this could lead us in a position where we kind of maybe have an ecosystem inside Europe, which is like guardrailed and like, you know, like safe from the outside. But this only works if we have these incubators and as you said, these companies, Andrea, that are developing these models internally. But it takes time. Like we need to start now, and we need to make sure that all the initiatives, all the small initiatives which are happening now, are not being kind of threatened or cut off by just uncertainty around regulations. So I don't want to have any AI startup right now like stopping their innovation in order to figure out what the AI Act means for them and then coming back to this topic in 1 year from now. I think we have to be really, really clear who is affected, what's happening right now, and what does it mean in practical applications. Because if we need like 6 months to figure this out, what it means in terms of practical applications, that's like coming back to the time horizon, that's just too much. So we need to be fast in terms of like being really transparent and communicating really clearly out there what this AI Act means, especially for startups, because these are the ones driving the innovation right now.
Andrea, please. I have one more question, but Andrea, please.
I've raised the hand. I haven't used Zoom for a while, so I forgot how to undo it. But yeah, I just wanted to say, I beg to differ a little bit. For example, there's a special fund which is not small. That's, for example, dedicated to small startups ran by women, because this is also something that we deal with a lot. If I can open this discussion as well. For example, Croatia is, I think, with Malta and Finland among the EU member states that has a superb digital literacy among girls of the age 16 to 19. And then in the IT sector, whether working or getting education in the sector, we have about 20% of women. So just, I think a broader discussion, I'm opening it again, I know. So there is funds and there's awareness certainly that Europe is lagging behind. You know, if you compare us with the States, and we're talking about the Silicon Valley, of course, there's a lot to be done. But again, I would like to say that we cannot ignore the fact that the AI Act is not, you know, doesn't have to be implemented tomorrow afternoon. If there's a 2-year transition period for everyone to figure it out a little. The thing is that I've mentioned 2021. This is when we proposed the original draft, the Commission. In the meantime, there has been talks within the member states. Obviously, the member states have consulted startups and companies working within their borders, and so there's a lot of knowledge from the private sector, from those who are working on it daily, incorporated in the Act. And the implementation, it will be implemented directly, but there's a lot of time for everyone to find their position with it. The general context is, I have to reiterate it, is the ethical elements and the ethical aspects of the use of AI. So that probably would be the largest message to both the users and the companies. And there's minimum standards that will have to be respected. Sometimes you have to, you know, jeopardize a little bit of innovation to protect the users.
But I want to come back to Tobias. Thanks, Andrea, for your comment. I had to ask you, because you have an AI startup. You talked about, I love that you mentioned how some things are launched in US and maybe in 3 weeks they're launched and presented in Europe. And at some point of time, we can face that those things won't be even implemented or showed in Europe, which is quite scary for the people who love tech and who want to be on the cutting edge. But my question is, like, what should we do if all of our startups from Europe, from Croatia, from Germany, will have similar thoughts, and they will just move their, I would say, startups or companies to US or some other countries that are more, I would say, suitable for innovation? What do you think? Would you, I don't know, switch to Europe and move to US instead, developing your startup in Germany? That's like my first thought for any founder.
And I think the thought is real. It's not only about like moving completely outside of like whatever country you're currently in, but just moving the development effort in, like shifting that to a different country where you have less regulation. And honestly, I think this is already happening. Like, you know, people are figuring out where, like, on what spots of these of the this planet they can go in order to build their AI startups. So I really like, I think everyone needs to be aware that this is a huge competition out there. Like, this is a competition about speed, about building the best models and finding the best use cases and industry applications. And I think one of the main reasons to stay inside Europe and inside Germany especially is that you're closer to the customers. But the problem is, if you don't have a good solution, which is also like coming from a regional ecosystem, you of course need to go to, like, you know, third-party vendors or vendors from outside Europe. And I think, at least from my experience, what I experience is that most companies, like even inside the EU, are explicitly asking for certain models from the US. Like, I mean, like, I don't want to call the elephant here in the room, but you know, what kind of word comes up when everyone thinks about AI? So they want to have this for their company, right? And now you can start and say, well, we have different options, like from Germany and from France and so on and so on. But like, long story short, they often like have a certain expectations of having the same experience just for their company. For example, of building an internal knowledge management or internal large language model, things like this. And I think this is a really interesting dynamic, because you have to like just start where the customers are, and being in the same regional region as the customers, of course, gives you better access to that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that these customers expect you to have also regional solutions, right? In the end, they don't care, because especially also when it comes to where's the data, where's data processing happening, where's like data being like transferred to. Like right now, we can run these models from US companies in European data centers. So the data doesn't even have to leave Europe, right? It's still like it's still a kind of US model, but running inside Europe. So these companies, they don't have a problem with that model because it's in Europe. Like everything is just compliant to regulation. That's fine. So I'm just saying it's a really, really thin line to walk right now between like regulation, which I totally agree on, which we need for AI, and like there's no discussion around that. And I also really like that we have come to the conclusion finally of what the AI Act is, because this gives us the much needed clarity to move forward. But again, like the line is really thin of, you know, what can we actually stretch and demand from companies right now. That's all I'm saying, because as you say, Martina, it's very easy for companies to just move somewhere else. Like there's no facility or no large thing here involved. Like you have data centers everywhere in the world. So yeah, you don't need to stay here.
You don't get me wrong. The idea from regarding European AI Forum is like, let's create this culture of dialogue between policymakers, between startup founders, because we don't want people or companies or startups leaving Europe. We think we have huge talent and we have a huge potential, but let's like open these really, really important topics and to see how can we change things, how can we develop things. But I would actually like to wrap it up, and I would leave my last question to Andrea. It was like really, really similar what I asked Tobias already, like considering the historical, I would say, context of the internet, where Europe faced a lot of challenges, I would say, in catching up with the tech giants. What measure is the European Commission taking to proactively shape more, I would say, notable or more, we like to say it sexy, more sexy AI landscape, European AI landscape on the global stage? I know you mentioned funds. I know you mentioned the financial support. I know you mentioned the AI Act, but do you have anything else to add, please?
Well, I think I have to add dialogue. I have to add dialogue and make it the centerpiece of our discussion, maybe. So I'm here on behalf of an institution. You are facilitating this, and Tobias is speaking, you know, from a different corner. So there needs to be a lot of info fed to the institutions from very competent experts. And I have trust. I know, you know, lobbying in Brussels is very legitimate. It's very regulated. And I think the more high quality lobbying is done towards the institutions and vice versa, the more input there is from the ground. You know, we have this act, it's fine. We have the funds. We have the understanding that globally we are lagging behind. The numbers are there. The big techs, the very large onlines, they're all there. We've regulated them, but still innovation is happening somewhere else, perhaps more than in Europe. And I don't have a definitive answer to your question, but I do think the solution is we cannot live in silos. I don't know the plural in English, but there cannot be just the market and the developers and the startups, and then you have the institutions thinking of some totally different concepts and speaking about human rights and the users without, extensive talk with what is needed by the companies in Europe, by those who are starting their businesses based on AI. So I don't have an answer, but I think dynamics is dialogue and a lot of bottom-up input for the institutions continually on a daily basis, I would say.
It's such a nice wrap up, actually, a dialogue that I think that's something that we should all be working on, and the things will be much, much more easier. Thank you, Tobias. Thank you, Andrea. It was a real pleasure and honor to have you guys on this panel. I also hope that you enjoy it. And now I will be switching from Croatia to, I think, Austria. Jeannette, are you here?
Well, it's not Austria directly, it's your German friend, but no problem about that. Thank you so much to the panelists. Thank you so much, Martina. Martina, as you wrapped up a little more early than anticipated in this point, just wanted to ask, perhaps, can you tell us, our different associations have very different focuses. And I think that what we see, especially with Crow AI, is your focus of reaching out to people, getting out, making public venues and discussing that. Perhaps we can take a little time and perhaps you can explain to us what, for example, in this crazy AI year 2023, you did in reaching out and what kind of focus you had at Crow AI.
Absolutely. Thank you, Daniel. And sorry, I was counting 30 minutes, so I thought I was running out of time.
Everything's fine.
I would love to take this, use this couple of minutes to explain actually what Crow AI is doing. So Crow AI started, as you all know, 4 years ago, and the idea was from the early start was that what the internet was for the last 30 years, like we mentioned on the panel, the next 30 years will be about AI. But from the early start, we never were focused just on AI startups or AI companies, because our thought was AI will be in every institution, in every company, no matter are you working in public or private sector. And that's the reason why we, through the last 4 years, got together marketing agencies, law firms, big tech companies, Croatian unicorns, Croatian startups. We have politicians, policymakers in our association. We have law firms, doctors. We also have art people who are designing those same AI startups. And that was our, I would say, mission from the early start. Right now, we are focused on two really simple things. We want to create a community and we want to educate the people. In education, Crow AI brought, like you already know, elements of AI 2 years ago. Croatia was the only country in Europe, together with Finland, that managed to enroll 1% of the population into the course, and that was a huge milestone. Then after that, we decided to take a step forward, and we created, I would say, Croatian educational model, and we wanted to brought these cool tech stories from Croatian tech ecosystem to Croatian high schools. Why we did that? Because in the era of ChatGPT and similar tools, it's really, really hard for professors to educate and to follow up everything that's going on. And we want to bring the best people from the tech industry. I'm talking about art managers, project managers, product managers, designers, startup founders, founders of some kind of agencies and so on, to Croatian high schools to teach you about technology, to teach you about how the world is changing, to tell their story and how they actually form their careers on technology. That's something that we do in education. That's something that we do in community building. We have our annual conference, it's AI to Future. Then we have, we don't really believe that we will change the world with huge projects, but we throw 2 good parties a year that we manage to get together politicians, business people, unicorn founders, art people, and so on, professors, deans, in the same place. And we believe that on those places we create magic. On the other hand, we have our annual, actually monthly meetups. We have CROI meetups. We are spreading those meetups across the country. We have visited a couple of cities during this last year. We also had a couple of meetups in Zagreb, but except that, because CROI has more than 450 members right now, we decided to create micro-communities. Micro-communities get together a niche group of people that are, I would say, connected by their occupation. So we have machine learning micro-community, those get together like machine learning engineers, scientists, and so on. We have product managers micro-community, and we have DevOps micro-community. And each micro-community gets together once a month. We also started because we saw a huge gap on the market where people were discussing a lot AI and how AI is going to affect our lives and it's going to change the future and so on. And we wanted to address that topic, and we created something called Fight Club. So we once a month get together. On one side, you have people who are really against the topic, and on the other side, you have people who are for the topic, and we let them fight, and we let people to hear both stories. So more or less, these are the things that CROI is doing and continuing in doing them in the next year.
Well, the first rule of Fight Club, there is no Fight Club, as I remember the movie correctly. So this is, of course, very interesting. Can you tell us, or do you have any kind of numbers, how many people attended in a year in your events?
Yeah, absolutely. So on CROI meetups, we usually have 70, 80 to 100 people, depends on the venue and so on. Yeah. On micro communities, there's usually, ML is a huge one. We have more than 160 members. And on each, I would say, gathering, you have around 50 to 60 people. Product meetups and the DevOps meetups are more private ones. So you get together like 30 to 40 people, but they're in the smaller place. It's intimate, and the best product managers get together from Croatia and discuss like their, I would say, thoughts and difficulties on those gatherings. But on AI to Future, it's a conference that gets together around 300 people. And parties get together around 200 people. Also, regarding the schools, in the last year, we visited more than 50 schools. We reached out to 2,500 students. So those are the numbers.
That's a very impressive numbers, I have to say, and I think that this is also a motivation for every association and in the European AI Forum, and especially also for the German one, to get more out there, explaining things, explaining AI, and because I think when you explain things, people, the fear of AI is not knowing AI, and I think that what you're doing at CROI AI is a very, very good point in doing so. Thank you so much, Martina. We really appreciate what you're doing, and have a great day, and a very welcome to rainy Zagreb.
Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you. Bye-bye. You know, guys, one of the really interesting parts of working and being in the European AI Forum is the whole European perspective. So as you said, we were in Brussels, Strasbourg. Then, of course, we just discussed in Zagreb, we were with Piotr in Warsaw. And now we are getting to Lithuania. Yeah. And I can tell you, I've made some moderations, but there are sometimes names that for a German are very hard to pronounce. So please bear with me. And if you are now one of the people I butchered their surnames, I'm really, really sorry. It's not intended. I will try to learn the names the best I can. But the next topic, of course, is the challenges of adoption of generative AI in the regulatory environment. So, Inga Karulaitytė-Kvainauskienė, yeah, I'm sorry in advance, yeah, is a lawyer and partner of Ecovis ProventusLaw in Lithuania, in Vilnius, I would guess, and is dedicating to advocating the widespread application of Gen AI in fintech, in the legal sector. And joining this name is a little bit more easier for me is Ferdinand Rüchardt, the project manager also from Ecovis in Germany, and Marco Berschneider, he's a PhD graduate who's on a focus in tax and accounting contribution to sharing innovative solutions.
Imagine a world where complex legal disputes are resolved in minutes, not months, where financial audits that used to take weeks are completed in a day. This isn't a scene from a science fiction film. It is a potential outcome of generative AI in our regulated professions, if some news is to be believed. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Inga Karulaitytė-Kvainauskienė, and I am a lawyer and partner at Ecovis ProventusLaw in Lithuania, and I want to promote the application and acceptance of generative AI in the fintech and legal industries.
And my name is Marco Berschneider. I'm a manager corporate strategy at Ecovis Germany, and I recently finished my PhD focusing on the uptake of AI in tax and accounting. Within our international Ecovis network, we're working on specific generative AI solutions to support various tasks across tax, audit, and legal professions. And in our experience, it is not lacking in AI applications. Specific solutions are already emerging. It is above all the acceptance of AI-based technology by potential users that is crucial to its efficiency and successful application. However, in a regulated environment, the barriers to acceptance are quite high. And that is exactly what we want to talk about today. In our presentation, we will focus less on the technical aspects of artificial intelligence and more on the socio-psychological requirements for its use. To begin with, let me ask cynically, is generative AI not just a hype? Aren't we setting our expectations towards this technology too high? Well, most technologies do follow the Gartner hype cycle. And right now, generative AI is heading towards its peak just before expectations become too great. But what comes next? Most likely a rapid downturn into disappointment. This is nothing to worry about, though. It's not a prediction of a disaster, but rather a request for sensible viewpoints among the exciting pledges of generative AI. And with this in mind, yes, artificial intelligence has the potential to disrupt our workplaces. But let's keep our feet on the ground and let's not exaggerate our expectations. Before we focus on the acceptance formation, let's take a brief look at generative AI and its use in tax, audit, and legal service firms. Generative AI is a branch of artificial intelligence focused on creating new content, whether it's text, images, music, or code. It differs from other AI approaches that are more about understanding or processing existing data. This generation of new content is powered by deep learning techniques combined with elements of natural language processing and computer vision. And the ability of generative AI to produce sophisticated and professional sounding outputs, it's noteworthy. Its easy availability is raising attention among professions and industries. This includes tax, audit, and legal services. As a result, a large proportion of employees in these professions will soon become aware of AI applications, and decision makers will be faced with weighing up the use of AI in their organizations. However, it will take more than just financial investment and the provision of products for these AI solutions to be used continuously and successfully. For the success of new products in an organization, user acceptance is crucial. Yet, human acceptance is a complex behavioral phenomenon. It goes hand in hand with the question of why people are determined to behave in a certain way. The factors that influence acceptance can vary depending on the subject, object, and context of acceptance, which is why acceptance studies are scientifically relevant on an ongoing basis. So what does accept mean from a scientific and theoretical perspective? First of all, the conceptual interpretation of acceptance are diverse. Described in abstract terms, the subject of acceptance, for instance, the user, first, before using the acceptance object, artificial intelligence, forms an inner attitude towards this object. This attitude can lead to a purchase or an initial use of this object, the so-called behavioral acceptance. And a continuous acceptance of the object by the user only becomes apparent through the user's recurring intention to use the object, the so-called acceptance of use. In summary, acceptance is a dynamic process. That was the theory in very short. But Inga, please tell us, what are the practical applications and challenges of acceptance in a regulated environment?
Thank you, Marco. In highly regulated sectors, adherence to laws and regulations is huge, given the strict consequences of non-compliance and the need to maintain market integrity. This emphasis on compliance extends beyond the legal framework, encompassing ethical considerations and governance standards. Generative AI, with its innovative capabilities, introduces a new frontier that must align seamlessly with existing corporate governance standards, ethical principles in finance and law, as well as whistleblower policies and protection mechanisms. Now, let's consider the functions of organizations operating in regulated environments. Firstly, these organizations often rely on independent support to ensure unbiased assistance in decision-making processes. Generative AI, with its ability to analyze vast databases and provide insights, must navigate the challenge of remaining impartial within the limits of regulatory requirements. Secondly, in regulated environments, there is a need for an objective control function. This involves leveraging generative AI for risk management and quality assurance purposes. Integrating AI into these critical functions necessitates a careful approach to ensure that the technology enhances rather than compromises the organization's ability to uphold regulatory standards. Lastly, organizations in regulated environments often serve as a representative function, advocating for favorable regulations and policies. Introducing generative AI into this dynamic requires fruitful consideration on how the technology can contribute to the advocacy efforts while respecting the regulatory landscape. In addition to the considerations we've discussed, several multifaceted factors further contribute to the challenges of integrating generative AI in regulated environments. Let's explore three critical aspects: regulatory and legal issues, human-AI collaboration, and impacts on jobs. First, let's talk about the regulatory and legal issues. Generative AI introduces a complex landscape regarding the ownership of AI-generated results. The traditional understanding of copyright is yet insufficient to address the nuances of creations produced by artificial intelligence. Organizations and legal systems are still discussing defining ownership, which raises questions about intellectual property rights and responsibilities. The powerful capabilities of generative AI also bring forth concerns about its potential misuse. As with any technology, there is a risk that it could be exploited for criminal or fraudulent activities. Regulators must stay ahead of these possibilities, adapting existing legal frameworks to address the evolving landscapes of generative AI applications. As well, there is a need to re-evaluate and update legal frameworks to address scenarios that were not anticipated when these laws were initially formulated. This involves creating a legal environment that fosters innovation while maintaining regulatory control. Second factor, human-AI collaboration. The collaboration between humans and AI also brings challenges related to anthropomorphism, the attribution of human characteristics to non-human entities. As AI becomes more sophisticated, there is a risk of assigning human-like qualities to AI systems, potentially blurring ethical boundaries and complicating issues of responsibility. The integration of generative AI raises concerns about the potential loss of competitiveness for human labor. As tasks become automated, there is a need to carefully balance the benefits of efficiency with the social and economic impacts on the workforce. And the third factor, impacts on jobs. The deployment of generative AI may lead to the displacement of certain roles, requiring proactive measures to address potential job losses and facilitate smooth transitions for affected workers. Workers may need to adapt to new ways of working, and industries might witness a transformation in the skills required for various roles. Conversely, the integration of generative AI may also create new opportunities and demands for certain skills. There is a need for workforce development strategies that empower individuals to navigate these changes and contribute meaningfully to the evolving job landscapes. Addressing the legal, ethical, and workforce-related challenges will be pivotal in ensuring a harmonious integration of generative AI into regulated sectors.
Well, another major challenge for the acceptance of generative AI in a strictly regulated environment is the creation of trust, as this field relies heavily on accuracy and integrity. Let's start with the mystery of the black box and its effect on trust. The black box nature of many generative AI systems refer to the lack of transparency in how these systems make decisions or generate outputs. Understanding how specific inputs lead to certain outputs is often like solving a puzzle without knowing all the pieces. This complexity is particularly problematic in environments demanding clear, well-founded references, such as in finance, tax, audit, or legal. Moreover, generative AI is not immune to manipulation or biases. For instance, a tax advisory generative AI system that's been trained on biased data might offer suboptimal advice to certain groups, affecting the fairness of tax planning and compliance. But also the garbage in, garbage out phenomenon can skew outputs, leading to distorted and unreliable results. In addition, barriers to acceptance could be seen in the use of generative AI tools for unethical practices like market manipulation or automated fraud through synthetic financial data generation. And besides, in a world where content and regulations are constantly evolving, these AI models require a continuous adaptation. But the process, including the retraining of those models, is both time-consuming and costly. Apart from legal issues, impact on jobs or trust, also the societal perceptions plays a pivotal role in this landscape of acceptance. The opinion of colleagues, standard setters, clients, friends, or family on AI-driven tools can significantly influence its acceptance. When AI is seen as a tool for enhancing social prestige, it's more readily embraced. Contrary, if AI is associated with negative behaviors, it can face societal pushback. At the same time, acceptance also hinges on education. A lack of skills in using generative AI tools can lead to apprehension and resistance. The slow transformation of educational content to include AI knowledge is a barrier that needs addressing to foster acceptance. As we can see, there are many challenges to be overcome. But what can be recommended to decision makers to increase acceptance in practice?
So let's dive into the recommended actions essential for successful navigating the challenges associated with the acceptance of generative AI within a regulated environment. Achieving this involves a symbiosis of influences that must be carefully cultivated. First, create a culture of innovation. Make an innovation-friendly culture, which is fundamental for successful AI integration within an organization. Create an atmosphere that encourages experimentation and continuous learning. Encourage employees to proactively engage with new AI-based applications on a job-related basis. Second, create trust through transparency. Acceptance of generative AI is tied to understanding its capabilities and limitations. Users must understand how AI applications make decisions, what data they use, and how they arrive at results. Train the users. Algorithms should not be viewed as a black box. The decision-making logic must be understandable and verifiable. Third, the principle of irreplaceability of humans. Generative AI applications are not replacements for human skills. They extend and enhance them. people must acknowledge that human judgment and ethical considerations remain central to professionalism. AI can provide recommendations based on algorithms, but final decisions are made by humans. Fourth, select the right tools. Identify and implement tools that seamlessly fit into the organization's existing workflow. Properly chosen tools can reduce misfunctioning and frustration among users. Select AI applications based on a thorough analysis of current processes and a clear definition of desired improvements. 5. Ensure the management of expectations. Problem is that potential users often lack clarity about the actual applications of generative AI. Adapters of AI must communicate realistic application scenarios, highlighting advantages, disadvantages, and specific areas of use. You must understand that addressing these challenges help users establish a realistic impression of AI tools' applicability in their daily work routine.
To wrap it up, acceptance of AI in regulated fields like tax, audit, and legal services is a dynamic and complex process. These areas, bound by strict regulations and ethical standards, present unique challenges and opportunities for AI integration. As tax advisors, auditors, and lawyers working in a regulated environment, we have a pivotal role in guiding AI transformation. We are responsible for leading our employees, for advising our clients, and for shaping public opinion about our profession in the context of AI advancements. These responsibilities underscore our commitment to ethical and effective adoption of AI in our fields. With this, we would like to end our presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for these very detailed insights into regulatory adoption of generative AI, and best regards to Lithuania. Now we have the stage for one of the key figures involved in the AI Act Trilogue negotiations, and it is my very great pleasure to welcome Kai Zenner to the stage, Head of Office of Axel Voss. Thank you, Kai, for taking the time to join us today to talk a little bit about behind-the-scenes trilogues and the AI Act and the next steps. So thank you very much. And I would like to start our discussion with a question that has not to do anything with AI. What is your superfood? How can you survive 37 hours of negotiating this complicated and very complex matter?
Well, we didn't really have superfood. It was actually the contrary. The council only provided very, very bad and dry sandwiches. But, well, I think we were also invested in the AI Act that we managed without proper food.
Well, that's what I call commitment, right?
Yes, yes.
And maybe kind of like talking a little behind the scenes, we've all been watching the nail biter from 6th of December to 9th, I think, in the very late evening. How productive were these negotiations? Because I think you had very little time for breaks, only one interruption. Can you maybe share a little bit behind the scenes info, how the trilogues went on? You are a great champion of transparent politics, and I think you have made the trilogues and the AI Act extremely accessible for everyone following the discussions. Please let us know a little bit more.
Yeah. So on this point, this is actually why Axel and myself are not completely happy with the final results of the AI Act, because let's say, not even looking on the content, we are just completely objecting this kind of policy making. We find it ridiculous that something so important like the AI Act that will have such enormous impact is being negotiated under the circumstances. As you said, without taking proper timeouts, to reassess new text that was being proposed, to also exchange a little bit with external stakeholders on certain points that you are maybe not so sure about. This is for us a no-go, and yeah, we would really like to see a situation in the future if there's a similar or similar circumstances that maybe a trilogue is yeah, paused after 10 hours, then there's 1 day free where you can basically reassess, and then you continue on the 3rd day again with your discussions. What happened now was, as you indicated in your question, that basically from Wednesday 3 o'clock until Thursday 3, I think, or 4 o'clock, we had no breaks. There were constantly new text proposals, and we actually right now don't really know ourselves what we agreed to, because it was just too much and just too many points, and the Commission didn't make it easier, because they, especially on foundation models and on prohibitions, were constantly producing new texts, so that now there are different versions flying around, and yeah, there is here and there a little bit question marks what was final and what was not final. And again, this could have been easily avoided if you would have taken those breaks. Content-wise, the two big issues on the table, as you saw probably in the press, were value chain and foundation models, or general purpose AI models, how they are called now, and as the second big block, prohibitions. And all other, so we had in general 21 agenda points, but all other agenda points were discussed rather swiftly, but most of the time really passed for those two major topics.
So which are, of course, also the two topics that interest, I think, our audience much, but maybe starting with the other points. So the other points are quite clear, mainly solved, or do you expect a lot of technical reruns, technical discussions on, I think, from everything else, from high risk to, yeah, a little bit the transparency to everything else that is in the AI Act, sandboxes, timelines, very important, and fines.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so on all other points, I think it was rather clear cut what the options were, and it is rather clear. I say rather because on a few points it's also there, not 100% clear if everyone has the same understanding what has been agreed on. But on most of the issues, like for example, let's say Annex 3, we had in Annex 3 this point for platforms, for very large online platforms that would also be categorized as high risk, or potentially could have been categorized as high risk, leading to overlaps with the DSA. This, for example, was just quickly discussed and in the end was deleted. So the parliament gave it up. And this happened basically on most of those 21 points, so that I think we just need to go through all of those points, need to quickly double check if everything is correctly mentioned in the 4-column document. But in those technical meetings that started on Monday this week until Friday this week, but then also continuing in January, probably most of those will really again be spent on foundation models and on prohibitions, because there are just too many things that are unclear, and there also the recitals are more important. For example, also with Annex 3, you can, and we did it already, you can put a lot of systems in a recitals that even though they would fall under Annex 3, they are exempted again. For example, this Airbus case of emotional recognition or something similar that is detecting that the pilot is starting to sleep and then sending an alarm. This is a typical example that you could exclude in the recital, And I think this will be, again, a major focus of our work to really use those recitals to clarify what in the future is prohibited and high risk and what not.
So not only paying attention to the text, but also carefully reading the recitals, which are
Exactly.
also a major part of the pages, I think almost half of it.
Exactly. Exactly. So there's still a lot to do.
And quickly and swiftly, so I expect the final text to be ready at the end of January, or do we need to wait a little bit longer? What is your expectation on the timeline?
Yeah, so the final day that we need to finish everything is, I think, the 9th of February, which is the last day where technical meetings are allowed. So yeah, it all depends now on the progress. Let's see how much we will manage this week. I think this week everyone is a little bit tired, and therefore I don't know if we manage much this week. Let's see. And then it's all about the Belgian presidency. I think for them it will be hard because they are having a kind of kickstart. So they joined already our technical meetings, but of course for them it's a lot now to process, to dive into. I think the Spanish will help them quite a lot, but yeah, let's see how it's working in January. But in my opinion, probably the most of the work will happen in January, and especially on the recitals, we will need a lot of hours for going through. As you said, I think it's around 100 recitals. It will take time.
So maybe proposing a good break now and over Christmas to join with double the power for everything.
Exactly. Yeah, no, this is really necessary. I think for many of them, especially for Miguel from the Spanish presidency and also the co-rapporteur offices, Dan and Laura, and so on. We all worked a lot, but those three, I think, in the last days and weeks, and some people in the commission, I think for them it's really important now to take a break over Christmas and recharge, as you said.
Perfect. So fingers crossed that you can have the time, you can take the time, and it will be nice, quiet Christmas and a nice start into the new year. But before kind of like we close our discussion, I of course need to ask on the topic of foundation models, because of course I was also watching day and night to see what the compromise is. And maybe you can share a little bit of light on that, because what we know so far is the two-tiered approach, the 10 by 25 flops differentiation, some kind of like details that were reported. Do you have something more clear? Because we also look at the press statements very thoroughly, and one point is missing or has not been reported in the official statements. It's the open source and licensing exemption. So maybe you have some details for the industry that is watching, very interested on those matters.
Yeah, so this also belongs in this category of, let's say, open points. I think there's a common understanding, and we have already a text. I think I actually saw it also in the press already, but especially when it comes to open source exemption in Article 2, and then the reference to this new foundation model or GPI chapter, and also 28. There, it's not 100% clear, and again, we don't have their final text. To my knowledge and in my understanding, the agreement, the political agreement was there's a full open source exemption when it's about AI systems, but if you use an open source AI system and kind of integrate it or commercialize it, for example, SAP would take something from GitHub and build around or on top of it their high-risk system for the employment sector, then SAP would need to fulfill the whole AI Act, so Article 8 to 15, especially the obligations for high-risk AI systems. The same applies to prohibitions and also to transparency obligations in Article 52. So again, once you are using an open source, free and open source AI system commercially, then this exemption does not apply. Then the political agreement, yeah, let's say I'm not the biggest fan, but it's a political agreement, is that in the two-tier approach, open source GPI models would be possible to be categorized as a systemic GPI model. So if the commission/office finds, for example, that Llama 2 from Meta fulfills this criteria that we put there in Annex YY, then they could designate Llama 2 in this category. And then Llama 2 would need to fulfill all the technical documentation criteria or obligations from Article C, plus all the obligations in Article D. So, and now the important question, what happens with the rest? So all the other free and open source GPI models would not need to fulfill Article C, so the technical documentation obligation, except maybe copyright, but this is maybe because it's not 100% agreed. So what does it mean in practice? Aleph Alpha, because it's a closed model, but a model that is not reaching the systemic criteria, would need to fulfill the technical documentation obligations in Article C. Mistral, because it is potentially very likely falling under our open source license definition, would not need to fulfill technical documentation obligations in Article C, maybe copyright, maybe not. And then the third question is free and open source AI components. We have this part at the moment in Article 28(2)(a), and which is about that the third-party AI component supplier that is, for example, giving a data set to a provider of a high-risk AI system, that those two need to cooperate based on standard contractual clauses or standard agreement. And there, the parliament wanted to exclude also every kind of open source AI components. And as far as we understood, the council agrees with this approach. But yeah, so this is at the moment the overview when it comes to open source. So probably most of it is exempted, but as you heard now, there are a few details where we still need to figure out how to place it in the text.
Thank you very much. I think this was extremely helpful, in particular, doing it based on examples for the industry and also shedding some lights on what we can take from the discussion is pretty much settled, and the other things that have some caveats and points to be clarified in the further discussions. So yes. Thank you very much. It was a very good insight. And now to, of course, give the whole picture, because it was also one of the two hardest points, I would just like to slightly touch on the biometrics matter, because we also saw there the differences in the common positions, in particular in the parliament's position. Maybe you can give us a little bit of background here, because also we take what is reported in the press releases, but we expect that that will not be the full extent of those prohibitions, and there might be exemptions that are more or less text.
Yes. So on this part, I would say it's not really 100% clear what is now agreed. If we would have this event on Friday, I could probably give a better picture on overview. Right now, I can, without mentioning now concrete prohibitions or high-risk use cases and so on, can just say that, yeah, there was an agreement to to create a kind of compromise that is still allowing national police authorities, law enforcement authorities to use AI technology in a way that is, let's say, limited by certain safeguards, but also address the concerns of the European Parliament. And one of the agreements was that there is not a ban on post-RBI, so remote biometrical identification, as the Parliament proposed, but that it's going back to the original Commission proposal that had it in Annex 3, but then add there certain safeguards. A similar deal was being reached on real-time remote biometrical identification, where the Parliament, as you know, wanted to ban basically everything. The Council wanted to allow everything, to make it now simple in my presentation. And there again, the co-legislators agreed that maybe the Commission's original proposal was already a kind of good middle ground. So what happened there was that the safeguards in paragraph 2 of Article 5, paragraph 3, 4, and so on, have been strengthened, that there were certain elements that have been added, and so on and so on. Then on other parts, like emotional recognition, I was speaking already about the Airbus case. There, for example, safety was being added as an exemption of the ban on biometrical categorization, certain use cases or certain attributes to categorize have been deleted. So yeah, let's say it was a very, very hard battle, really about every word. We as EPP think it's a good compromise. But especially our colleagues from the left-wing political groups, because for them it was basically #1 priority. I think it's a fair point that they need a little bit of time to now, after we could sleep a little bit over the weekend, with a fresh mind, really check the text. And also, again, unfortunately, under those circumstances, it was not always 100% clear what the final deal was. So that now I think it's really, really crucial that all the sides are trying to figure out with each other what should be the final text. And it's not good on better regulation, or from a better regulation perspective. I think it was not 3 good days. I hope we are learning our lessons out of it. But again, let's say now on the AI Act, everyone wants this deal. Everyone wants to have a law before the European elections. So I think this process that we see now, again, is happening because of those problems in better regulation problems in those last 3 days. But I think we will be able to fix all those unclear points at least until the end of January, and then have a stable version. And this is why probably you will see maybe some early texts, maybe already in the next days, but a stable version probably, as you said before, at the end of January.
That's good to know. So I myself, being a lawyer with a background and diving into all those single words, I take every text and love to compare. I'm so interested to stay up to date on those developments. The sun was coming out here in Brussels. So maybe just to wrap up on a positive note and give the industry something to think about also during the next 2 weeks that will be hopefully a little bit quiet. What do you recommend now for the European AI ecosystem? What to think about, what to consider? Because I think we have 2 years' time to 2026 until everything is fully enforceable. But what can we do now, and what are the most important points to address as soon as possible over this transition period?
This I will gladly do. Just before, I need to correct you. on the transition period, I think we have a good solution on the table. It will be 6 months for prohibitions, 12 months for general purpose AI models, then 36 months, which I think is a very, very good news for sectorial legislation, because those 36 months transition period would apply to Annex 2, and everything else, as you said, 24 months, 2 years. What can industry do? So the AI Act, as I now mentioned on a lot of panels, is, or the adoption of the AI Act is not the end of our journey. There's a lot coming on level 2, on level 3. So on level 2, it's extremely important for industry to engage now with standardization bodies. So Sebastian Hallensleben and Sensenelec in this working group are currently trying to create those horizontal standards on the AI Act. And as you all know, Article 40 of the AI Act gives you the presumption of conformity once you are building your AI system based on those harmonized standards. Hopefully they are there in time, but so far this process of standardization is dominated by a few often non-European companies. So what I would say, especially to people that are in this call and that are participating in the European AI Forum, please use your expertise and introduce your expertise in the European standardization process if you want that European values are being recognized there and included there, and if you want to avoid that certain large non-European companies really force their view, their ethical principles in. This is really crucial. So it's really a second part of our battle on AI, and companies should really take this serious. I know smaller SMEs and startups probably lack the competences, the resources, and so on. But for example, the German KI Verband or Bitkom or BDI or larger companies then maybe should act as a kind of sponge that is kind of taking all the information from smaller actors and then on behalf of them takes or participate in standardization. A second point is between level 2 and level 3 are guidelines by national competent authorities and also the European Commission. We as Parliament had there a big victory that there will be more centralized guidelines in the future published by the Commission. But the Commission doesn't know everything. They cannot do everything. And even though they are constantly consulting, like I am doing with everyone, probably it's wise for especially niche companies to engage actively with national competent authorities and the Commission in order to confront them with certain practical problems, with best practices and so on. Because it's again, it's the experience and the expertise of the European AI Forum members to be contributed. And without those contributions, the guidelines will not be workable and will really lack perspective. So it's super important to use those 2 years now to contribute in this process. And then as a third and last point, as you saw, we have a code of practice in the foundation model chapter. We have codes of conduct in Article 69. But even beyond those, let's say, public-private partnerships or cooperation, there are some sheer private networks and governance mechanisms like the AI trust label from VDI and others. I think this is showing in a very good direction because it also helps smaller market players. So try to engage with those private mechanisms and try to achieve some kind of burden sharing in a way that you are engaging with those private alliances that are trying to build up governance mechanisms that make it easy then in the future to say, I fulfill Article 10 data governance because, for example, in this platform, I included a number of information and then I got the green light via the platform. So this is something, again, that the VDE is working on, but also other players. And I think this could also really help industry in the future to become compliant, especially taking into account that there's so much more digital legislation coming, like the Cyber Resilience Act, Data Act, and so on and so on. It's not only the AI Act, and the government and the European Commission cannot do everything. So private partnerships, private initiatives are really key to become compliant. Maybe I stop here, but those 3 points would be my main message.
Thank you very much. That was extremely helpful. And I, in particular, take up for my Agenda 2024 to contribute to being one of those sponges, bringing together the smaller players' feedback. And thank you also for the pointer to the standardization works that are ongoing, that are in this nail-biting thriller over the AI Act, often forgotten, but not less important, and maybe even more. Thank you. It was a tremendous pleasure having you here with us. Thank you for taking the time. And we look forward to hearing from you very much in the future, and also to collaborating and to observing what comes out of the final deal and the final text of the AI Act. Thank you very much, Kai Zenner.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.
So guys, we are now in the last ways of the European AI Forum 8th edition. And I welcome on stage, we have now Alberto Di Felice. I'm looking if he's there. Yes, I see him. Alberto, benvenuti. It's great that you're here. Alberto is the Director of Infrastructure, Privacy and Security Policy for Digital Europe. Thank you so much for joining us. The floor is for the next 5 to 6 minutes yours, and we really appreciate that hearing from you.
Thank you, Daniel. So as Jeannette said, it's getting sunnier in Brussels, but there's still quite a lot of clouds and quite a lot of dribble that's coming down, and that's of course a metaphor for the status on the AI Act. As Kai said, I think we have a sense that there's a deal. We were reassured last week pretty strongly by the Commission and the Spanish presidency that this is a real deal, that there was a lot of work already on the text. As Kai just illustrated, there's still quite a lot of technical work that will need to happen on, let's say, not secondary aspects of what the final thing will actually look like. And I think as industry, so Digital Europe, big pan-European trade association, will represent the entire panoply of digitizing sectors, all of which will be covered by the AI Act. And I think, like Kai, we are certainly pleased with the fact that we have an AI Act that will be applicable. I think it is very important. We as industry, we're very supportive of the fact that Europe decided to regulate first. But the way that we do that, obviously, is very important. And like Kai, I don't think it's very edifying that we try to finesse very important aspects of the most important law that will have been produced by this commission on digital over, let's say, 2-3 days in a council room where people are forced to be eating very underwhelming dry sandwiches that are notoriously served in Brussels. So we are concerned in terms of probably two main things. First is obviously what everybody has been talking about, the treatment of foundation models, general purpose AI. This is something that emerged very late in the discussions, and the approach that was ultimately chosen with this DSA, DMA-like tiered model is problematic on a number of accounts. First, because it sort of reverses the risk-based approach, covering general purpose applications with very extensive obligations potentially for the higher tier, and also the fact that in terms of legal certainty in the long term doesn't really bode well, because there will be a lot of flexibility for the AI office, the commission potentially, to refine what those thresholds are. And then we're sure there will be a lot of people who will be covered, a lot of companies that will be covered. And there's also the problem of substantial modification for these systems, which will be adopted by a lot of other companies in the value chain, which could also potentially be caught in the crosshair of the regulation. And then more broadly, let's say, and this is a problem that we have been struggling with since the beginning of the proposal, is the fact that the entire edifice of the AI Act is probably the most complicated regulatory edifice that we've ever had. So I'd like to sort of summarize this by saying that it's sort of 3 times the size of what the GDPR was. It applies pretty much horizontally, meaning to say that even though it is risk-based and there are specific cases that are identified, they're pretty extensive. So a lot of people will have to comply. And the system of compliance is one based on placement on the market. So strong requirements, and in some cases, third-party conformity assessments before products can be placed on the market. What this does, it puts a lot of strain on the system. So Kai mentioned, for example, the importance that harmonized standards will play in ensuring compliance. We know, obviously, creating harmonized standards from past experience for product legislation is very complicated. The timelines that we have, 2 or 3 years, are very challenging. And so there will be a lot of strain on all actors in the ecosystem to make it work. Otherwise, as we know from the experience, for example, medical devices, where we've had backlogs of product conformity assessments, this will cause Europe to lose access to very important technology in the very short term. And then I think the final big picture question that we have, just as we had it with the GDPR, is what will be the impact in terms of innovation that this will have, particularly for European companies, because there is this feeling that, and I think this has permeated the entire digital strategy with this commission, there's this feeling that Europe can lead the way in digital when it comes to vertical use cases. So adopting innovation across transportation, energy, and the like. And the AI Act, of all the legislation that has come into force, and to Kai's point again, I think we've reached the pinnacle of the amount of legislation on digital and digitizing sectors that we've ever seen. The Act is the biggest one, will have an impact on everybody. And therefore, it's very important that the implementation of this, all the way from the recitals and the articles that we're finishing writing now, all the way to how we understand the standards and we put them in place, and how the regulators will be enforcing this with companies. We need to make sure that all of this works well and that we have a credible, realistic way of implementing this. Otherwise, there's a real risk that all this regulation forced on companies will further contribute to a very difficult investment climate that we have already in Europe.
So thank you very much. I hope also that we see more of each other here in Brussels, in particular with the European AI Forum that will expand its operations during the next years. I thank you very much and wish you a very nice afternoon. I unfortunately, again, have no time for all the questions I would like to ask you, but maybe we do a follow-up because I need to be timekeeper with the next speaker already in line. Thank you. See you soon.
Thanks a lot, Jeannette.
And now I have the very great pleasure of introducing a friend we already met during our time at the Spin-off conference in Bulgaria, where we were guests and very honored to be partners this year as the European AI Forum. I have the pleasure to welcome Professor Dr. Georgi Angelov, the Deputy Minister of Innovation and Growth of Bulgaria, that will be joining us next, and also bringing the voices and the views of our friends from AI Cluster Bulgaria to the table. Thank you very much.
Dear colleagues, my name is George Angelov. I'm Deputy Minister of Innovation and Growth of Bulgaria and Professor of Microelectronics in the Technical University of Sofia. I would like to congratulate the Forum on AI. Today we have a very good news. It was passed the AI provisional deal on the AI Act. This is the first international legal decision concerning the AI aspects, which is great. Congratulations. A few words about the Bulgarian ecosystem. We so far developed a series of achievements in the area of high tech. One of the priorities of Bulgarian government and in particular of our ministry is the promotion of high value-added innovations. This means that the R&D involvement is a key. We so far developed a series of centers of excellence and competence in a lot of areas, including mechatronics and electronics, computer science and information technologies, biotech and medtech applications, circular economy and clean technologies, implementations and creative industries. These also are priority of the Bulgarian smart specialization strategy. We also participate in the creation of the European Digital Innovation Hubs, which will be key in the upcoming years. Also, we have developed a lot of infrastructure in the universities and promoted the exchange and the convergence between the industry and the academia. We have a lot of infrastructure that is used by the industry already, and this was supported sustainably in the recent years as we have operational programs. Now they are called programs. Now we have program of education, we have program of research, innovation and digitalization for smart transformation. We also have this year's launched a dedicated program funding the so-called research universities. These are 10 Bulgarian universities out of all 50 plus universities. We also have developed and commissioned 4 high-performance computers. One of them is Petascale, the Discoverer. It is funded together by the Bulgarian government and the Euro-HPC joint undertaking. We also set the Insight Institute. It is partnership between Sofia University and the ETH in Zurich, where we managed to aggregate and to attract world-leading scientists in the area of AI and applications. We also have a very good position in education of young people. We are 6th in the world in Olympics in mathematics and 1st in the world in Olympics in computer linguistics. Currently, we're developing the large language models for Bulgarian language, such as the applications of ChatGPT, but in Bulgarian, let's say, simplified. And finally, I would like to point out the priorities of the Bulgarian high-tech policies. These include the chips, the space, the AI, the energy and the mechatronics sector, and defense applications. All these priorities are sustainably and consistently developed in the recent years, and currently we're providing the foundation and the financial instruments for the upcoming years now. I would like success to the forum.
So, thank you very much for joining us also from Bulgaria. And now we are almost at the end of our 8th edition of the European AI Forum, but not ending quite without having a last contribution from Spain. The Spanish presidency has had an important role, in particular in the AI Act, in the final agreements on the AI Act. And now it is our very great pleasure to also welcome a speaker from the Spanish ambassador to Croatia, Juana González-Barbe. Thank you very much. The floor is yours, and we're excited to hear your perspective.
Good morning to you all. I'm glad that as a rotating presidency of the European Council, CROA AI has invited me to share some thoughts with you in this European AI Forum, of which which AI is one of the founders. I would like to share with you some thoughts in my capacity of diplomat and how I see artificial intelligence in the world today. First of all, I think it's important as an European to have very much in mind the soon-to-be EU regulation or act on AI once we have an agreement with the European Parliament. It's very useful to compare it with the executive order issued by President Biden on the use and the development of a safe, secure and trustworthy artificial intelligence. There are similarities and differences between the two regulations which are worth mentioning. First of all, the European one includes the participation of the European Parliament, whereas we don't know if Congress will in the end support the orientations contained in the executive order of President Biden. On the other hand, the executive order, the American executive order, is more all-encompassing. Basically, when you compare it with the European Act, would-be European Act, there we are concentrating basically on the risks and the regulations and the requirements that firms developing AI or firms using this sort of technology should comply with. Whereas in the American executive order, there is the issue of risks when you take into consideration the protection of workers, the protection of citizens and users and consumers, also the need to respect equity and promotion of civil rights. There is a specific mention of child sexual abuse, but you have there other considerations, for example, the protection of critical infrastructures, or also the issue of dual use or requirements for and controls for buyers of foreign origin that may use artificial intelligence with a malicious intent. So I do believe that we are here considering, first of all, how to develop artificial intelligence in a safe way that can be held international standard. And we have to distinguish between what we will do among partners, America, European Union, other partners with the capacity of developing artificial intelligence and with the same set of values, namely, of course, the UK, but also South Korea, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and others, and other international partners with the capacity and potential of developing artificial intelligence technologies, which may be hostile actors vis-à-vis the West, Russia, Iran, or competitors like India or China, India with a democratic system and China not sharing this sort of governance with the West, and how we can develop an internationally accepted set of norms for this crucial development in humankind. Also, artificial intelligence has catched the international attention, coming from not only from legislators, but also coming from the startups and the firms already working in it. It has been quite well known, the controversy that led to the firing of Sam Altman from OpenAI, and how he has been accepted back after some pressure from workers and others. OpenAI, which was perhaps the first worldwide known firm because of the development and commercialization of ChatGPT. And I may quote, just to end this brief intervention, the difference that one international magazine has made between doomers and boomers, partisans of developing artificial intelligence with especially safeguards, and others who insist that artificial intelligence should be developed with as many hurdles as possible so as not to hamper inventiveness. I think that here we are confronting an issue that has occupied the minds of humankind since we started thinking about society, since philosophy started in our world, and namely if we believe that man or the human being is in principle prone to abuse power or not. Depending on which option you choose, then you will be among one camp or the other. As always, the best way forward is to find the necessary balance, which is one of the issues that I imagine will be dealt with and talked about in this forum. So thank you very much and good morning.
I just want to say that we are wrapping up. I think this was our last point that we have in this 8th edition of the European AI Forum. I want to thank you, Jeannette. I really listened with whole interest, especially with the interview with Kai Zenner, which was really insightful. I think a little bit, if I have to make a little resume, also when I talk to the other members of parliament, I think we all have a little post-traumatic AI Act syndrome. In this case, that we're really happy that it's over, but oh my God, yeah, and what we don't, and we don't know. I think it was very interesting when Kai said, well, I don't know really how it will be in the paper, what we agreed politically, yeah. So I thought this was really interesting. So what takeaway did you have, dear Jeannette?
You know, I'm a little bit of a nerd. Of course, the deal is done, but the work is long not over. I know this from all the legal stuff, when parties agree and then you need to put the agreement into words. So I think there is quite something coming up. Yes, so let's see how that plays out. I wouldn't for myself say it's traumatic. So for me, it was one of the most exciting, let's put it like that, exciting moments in AI governance history to be part of the AI Act and the Trilogue negotiations. But of course, still there is a lot of work to be done. And I think we all deserve a break after, you know, everybody has put a lot of work, a lot of thoughts, a lot of contribution into this process that started 2021. So I think we need to recharge now, maybe take a step back a little and then start with fresh energy to really fix all the open points that there still are.
I couldn't agree more. And in this case, we will see what the next year will bring. I hope it will bring not only the regulation, it will bring good business for our AI companies from Europe, for European products, because without business, no regulation, yeah. And in this case, I really hope that also on the point of expanding the European ecosystem, 2024 will be such a good year as we had in 2023. Guys, this will wrap up our 8th edition of the European AI Forum. Sorry for the technical little difficulties. We will improve that, I swear to you. I want to thank my dear colleague and Vice President Jeannette Gorzala from AI Austria. My name is Daniel Abbou. Wish you a very pleasant day. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, whatever you're doing, and have a great day. Bye-bye, Jeannette. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Goodbye to everyone. See you soon.